Chapter 643. Deadlock. Wuyu could not see the smile when it appeared on Zuomo's face, but for some reason, he had a feeling. His heart jumped. Did Xiao Emoge have something up his sleeve? Yet his wings had already moved at full power. He did not hold anything back in this blow. His pair of wings almost disappeared into the air. Even the howl of movement could not catch up. Even if there was a mountain in front of him, he had the confidence he could cut through it. Suddenly, great pain came from his wings. Blood suddenly sprayed from Wuye's pair of indestructible wings. An indescribable pain came from his wings. Wuyu immediately changed color. The wings seemed to have been cut up by very thin knives and fell into dozens of pieces in the air. In the air, dozens of strands that were as thin as hair flickered in and out of view. If it wasn't that there was blood on some of them, Wuyu would not have detected them at all. What was this? Wuyu felt terror. But before he could react, his body suddenly became restrained. Countless invisible threads tightly wrapped around him. These invisible thin threads were extremely strong. They started to tighten. Because they were very thin and strong, they were as sharp as knives. Wuye's strong emo physique was forcibly cut open by these tiny strands. Pew! Tiny sprays of blood seeped out from all parts of Wuye's body. The thin strands sank deeply and terrifyingly into his flesh. 3,000 threads of worry. The 3,000 threads of worry could restrain even the anti-dragon claw. Wuyu didn't have the power to resist them. The black sickle on Zuomo's body had not yet disappeared. He was tightly bound, but his smile became even brighter. From the beginning he knew that his chances of success at defeating Wuyu with just the 10-crow celestial domain was not high. He put his hopes on the 3,000 threads of worry. The 3,000 threads of worry was something that could subdue something as vicious as the anti-dragon claw. It shouldn't have a problem against Wuyu. He really had used great effort to bait Wuyu to come close. Showing weakness, showing pride. Luckily, the outcome was as he had expected. The 3,000 threads of worry could shift from being tangible and intangible. The two of them were both restrained, but one could not forget that they were still inside Zuomo's 10-crow celestial domain. Zuomo had expended great effort to lock down Wuyu. He did not hesitate, and the killing moves came right after. The 10 suns in the sky suddenly spun. Whoosh! An extremely faint flame suddenly sprouted from under Wuyu. A blue light rose on Wuye's body that stopped the flame. Inside the blue energy, Wuye's expression was terrifying. His body was soaked in blood. A furiously murderousness flashed through his eyes as he bit his tongue. The blood on his body suddenly moved as though it was alive. Emo insects the size of a thumb climbed out of his blood. These emo insects were completely covered in Wuye's blood, and emo matrices could be seen on them. They quickly moved on Wuye's body. As the blood emo insects moved, a thick layer of blood-colored light was released from them, which shrouded all of Wuye's body. At this time, the blue light could not withstand the faint gold flame and crumbled. Zuomo had a bad feeling. This blood-colored light was very hardy. Even though it hissed as it was being burned and slowly decreased in size, the speed was very slow. The faint gold flame was one of Zuomo's last tricks. The sun crystal seed was inside his body, and the Shen power he cultivated had merged into the 10-crow celestial domain, which caused unexpected changes to happen to this 10-crow celestial domain. The Sun Shen fire was one of those. Originally, the flame of the 10-crow celestial domain should have been the 7th grade golden crow feet fire. The legend had it that the golden crow was covered in fire, and the 3 wisps on its feet were the most powerful. Those were called the golden crow feet fire. But Zuomo had an immature sun in his body. This sun crystal seed formed the crux of Zuomo's 10-crow celestial domain, which caused it to rise in power. But what really caused this change was Zuomo's Shen power merging into the emo physique. When the golden crow feet fire was touched by Shen power, it underwent an innate change which caused this newborn fire to be peerless in its dominance. This kind of fire had never been recorded before, so Zuomo called it the Sun Shen fire. The Sun Shen fire was more domineering than all fires that Zuomo had ever seen. If Zuomo hadn't formed this fire, he would not dare to touch this fire at all. The golden crow feet fire was already 7th grade. This Sun Shen fire far surpassed it, so it probably was 8th grade. Even with its uniqueness, it was still being stopped by this layer of bloody light. How could Zuomo not be shocked? What was this ghastly thing? Behind the curtain of blood, Wu Yu was even more astonished. These blood emo insects were his ultimate life-saving measure. They were called bat blood insects. He usually fed them with all kinds of poisons and varieties of bat blood, including his own blood. These bat blood insects were considered immortal. Unless it was a martial, normal emo weapons and flames were ineffective against them. These bat blood insects could also travel through space at will, and were hard to predict and defend against. If it burrowed into the body of the enemy, it would suck the other's blood and energies. Wu Ye's cultivation had grown in these years and rarely fought. However, he had carefully raised these bat blood insects. In this emergency, he released these bat blood insects. But he had not expected that the blood layer formed by the bat bloodworms could not stop the advance of 10 Crow Celestial Domain's fire. His first reaction was this was impossible. While the 10 Crow Celestial Domain was the first domain in general level, Xiao Emoga definitely had not reached its complete form. The power of the 10 Crow Celestial Domain resided in its ability to channel the power of the world, not in its fire. How could it have such a powerful flame? What he found even harder to believe was that the thin invisible strands on his body actually restrained the bat blood insects. All of the bat blood insects were tightly restrained and could not break free and move through space. Watching as the blood barrier was slowly burned away, his hopelessness grew. Someone come. Quick help. A wail echoed through the 10 Crow Celestial Domain, but it could not pass out of the domain. Zuomo also felt extremely panicked. Right now, all of his power was focused on powering the Sunshin power, and he did not have any attention to spare. If someone really came to help, then it would not be good. Ding Dong had stopped and fled once Wu Yu had thrown out the Blackheart treasure coins and set up the ineffectiveness realm. He had been unable to breathe under a Gui's storm of attacks, and he finally managed to calm his mind slightly. Watching as Wu Yu easily restrained that terrifying and ugly woman, Ding Dong felt excited. Wu Yu Darren, as expected of the first seat of the Tenyu Frontier Guards. His power was really unfathomable. He felt even more anticipation when he saw Wu Yu Darren easily playing with Xiao Emogu inside the 10 Crow Celestial Domain. Due to the fright and humiliation he had received, he wanted to kill this group with his own hands. Yet he was left gaping at the following events. In a flash, Wu Yu Darren was heavily wounded and unable to move. Watching as Wu Yu Darren was swallowed by the flames, Ding Dong was so frightened he almost turned and fled. Fortunately, the blood light that came after stopped the flames. Ding Dong was a very smart person. He quickly saw that while Xiao Emogu's 10 Crow Celestial Domain suppressed Wu Yu Darren, the two were in a deadlock. A daring thought flashed through his mind. If he could save Wu Yu Darren, in the future, he could do what he wanted under the command of Marshal Yu. Wu Yu Darren was the first expert in Marshal Yu's command, and the person most trusted. Finding riches in danger. When he thought of this, Ding Dong gritted his teeth. He turned and charged towards Zuomo. Ha, you want to do something sneaky. The black gold seal soldier had a disdainful expression. Because Wu Yu did not have the attention to spare, he had used a way to break free of the bat sickle on his body. He looked at Ding Dong with a malicious smile. Ding Dong's heart went cold. How could he have forgotten this calamity? Qianqing had died by the hands of this strange emo puppet. Even he had been shocked at the power that Qianqing had concealed. But even so, he had died terribly at the hands of this dark gold emo puppet. Damn it! The black gold seal soldier's grin was terrifying in Ding Dong's eyes. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dozens of figures flew out of the Yu Frontier Guards. They saw that Wu Yu Darren was in danger and came to help. Xu Long and the others also flew out when they saw this. The two sides started to fight in the sky. Xu Long and the others could be considered of above-average power in the MO territories, but they had just fought and this was the moment they were most exhausted. At this time, they were just fighting by risking their lives. Adding on that they were skilled in cooperating, they managed to block this wave of attacks. The intensity of the battle in the air was almost unimaginable. The other people were watching entranced. Everyone was shocked at the hardiness of Xiao Emogu's subordinates. They had thought that these subordinates were tired after a hard battle, but they were still unrelenting when facing the famous Yu Frontier Guards. Where had Xiao Emogu recruited such strong subordinates from? Many people found this hard to comprehend. They had all personally experienced that hard battle against the Ming bandits. Other than Zhu Ku and a few other powerful people, all of them were tired and completely drained of strength. Suddenly, a strange sound in the air rang over the entire battlefield. The ineffectiveness domain set up by the Blackheart treasure coins was divided in two from the middle as though two enormous hands had ripped it apart. The scenes inside the ineffectiveness domain disappeared. With a whine, the 7 Blackheart treasure coins landed with dimmed luster on the ground. A Gue stood silently in the air. This sudden event immediately changed the situation on the battlefield. Xu Long's side was naturally cheering while the Yu frontier guards had ashen expressions. They had seen how powerful the woman was just now. The Yu frontier guards immediately retreated. At this time, a sigh sounded across the entire battlefield. This marshal is very disappointed in your performance. Does this marshal have to personally fight? The Yu frontier guards who had been demotivated immediately flushed. Their eyes filled with blood as they moved forward to engage in battle again. The elite soldiers of the Yu frontier guards back in the ranks could not stop themselves from entering the fray. In a blink, the Yu frontier guards had the advantage. Yet just at this time, no one noticed a sharp light flash across Bihan's eyes. Chapter 644. The Golden Crow battering ram. Bihan had felt that the Yu frontier guards showed signs of relaxing and becoming disorganized. Now with the rush of seemingly random individuals, the previously strong defense was starting to fall apart. The elite Yu frontier guards that were stirred by Marshal Yu had started to fly out of the ranks. Empty spaces appeared among the organized ranks. These spaces appeared random and did not seem to be of great weakness to the Yu frontier guards' thick ranks. Even Marshal Yu dismissed it. For a troop that was 10,000 strong, the departure of several hundred people did not affect the overall strength of the battalion. However, Bihan did not think the same. The Yu frontier guards that had charged out were the elite members. They were not great in number, but they were all core members of their little teams. They had a direct effect on the overall combat abilities of the Yu frontier guards. This effects of this would be hard to detect normally, but if the troops encountered a strong opponent, it would show. Looking at the Yu frontier guards that were flying out, Bihan suppressed his urges to fight. The weakness was slowly appearing, but there was no change in the core formation of Marshal Yu's troops. Even if he charged in now, he would not be able to threaten the core formation. He continued to wait patiently. The Yu frontier guards who had been emboldened into battle were astoundingly strong in battle. Xu Long and the others immediately felt the pressure increase. However, as a Gue and the Black Gold Seal soldier joined the battle, the pressure on them decreased quickly. Experts like a Gue and the Black Gold Seal soldier could be of great effect in small-scale battles like this. The two did not have any match. Everywhere they passed, the elite Yu frontier guards would fall from the sky. They were like ghosts and hard to catch, not giving the enemy a chance to surround them. But the number of people in the sky increased. The usually proud Yu frontier guards were truly angry now. They crazily flew out of their ranks and entered the battlefield. Beside the chariot, a subordinate could not resist urging, "Lord, we need to charge." "Charge," Marshal Yu said slightly. "Yes," the subordinate said urgently. "Only one charge would be needed. If this continues, the fatalities will be too high." A piece of the sky suddenly became dark red with 10 suns fixed at positions inside. They were slowly spinning at an indescribable and profound rhythm. They were like 10 magnets that attracted and repelled each other. Under the 10 balls of flame, a figure carrying a dragon claw stood proudly. Zuomo's face was cold and golden scripts flickered through his eyes. A serene gold light lit up from the sun script at his forehead, and he appeared like a god descending to mortal realms. "Kill." The voice was like thunder and rang over the entire battlefield. The dark red sky suddenly expanded and quickly spread outwards from Zuomo. This transformation came so quickly that more than 100 of the Yu frontier guards were unable to react before they were sucked in. The 10 suns suddenly released a powerful golden light that crisscrossed on the dark red sky, and flames flowed on the ground below. Among the golden flows of fire, the brigadier-level Yu frontier guard wailed, and started to burn with a boom. They burned to ashes like dry wood in an instant. Inside the dark red 10 Crow celestial domain, The 10 suns started to revolve slowly again. Such a powerful 10-crow celestial domain. Zhu Ke couldn't resist saying in shock. The soul MO lure that he cultivated was one of the top MO skills in the MO world, but it focused more on being unpredictable. He could not kill 100 brigadiers like this. 10-crow celestial domain, as expected of the first domain in general level. Unparalleled in its dominance. This move astounded the entire field. A brief pause even appeared on the heated battlefield. Everyone was shocked by such a dominating blow. The Yu Frontier Guards changed expression and unconsciously showed a threat of fear. Even though there was an enormous gap between Brigadier and General, every one of the general levels present were silent and shocked at seeing one move kill 100 brigadiers. Zhu Ke and the others were even more astonished. They knew that Zuomo's 10-crow celestial domain had been at an elementary level at the start of battle. But now 10-crow celestial domain was domineering and held a vast presence. Many people were also puzzled. The 10-crow celestial domain was very rare and most of them had never seen it before, but Xiao Mo guess 10-crow celestial domain seemed even more powerful than the records of 10-crow celestial domain. Shock and uncertainty mixed on people's faces. With a long shout, Zuo shot up. When he was several hundred zhang in the air, he suddenly turned and like a spear he dove down. The light of the sun shone at his brow. The air rushed past his face and his hair rippled in the wind. But his face was as hard as stone and did not change. The dark red space around him flickered like a flame. However, it spread across the sky like it did before but was closely held against Zuomo's body. Those 10 domineering and burning suns turned to 10 fist-sized golden balls of flame that revolved rhythmically around Zuomo's body. Having just killed Wu Yu, Zuo was at his peak. His mind was completely clear. The 10-crow celestial domain seemed to be a part of his body and moved to his thoughts. Looking at the fierce battlefield under him, fighting spirit burned inside Zuo and rampaged. The anti-dragon claw on his back seemed to detect his raised spirits and vibrated lightly. A layer of gold overlaid over Zuomo's vision. The air rushing past him cut like knives, but he was unaffected. Looking at the ground coming towards him, he suddenly spread his arms wide. Boom. The 10 suns revolving around his body sounded at the same time. They spun rapidly and increased in speed. The dark red space expanded outwards, pulled by the revolutions of the 10 suns. In a blink, Zuo seemed to be smashing towards the ground like a ball of furious dark red flames. The Yu Frontier Guards paled. Xiao Mo guess target was the Yu Frontier Guard ranks. Protect the Lord. Panicked voices sounded in waves. The Yu Frontier Guards immediately panicked. The boom in the air seemed to sound inside their minds. The ground under their feet shook. They looked over in shock. The dark red flow that roared had rushed towards them, seeming to increase in size. They almost suffocated from the pressure. Umph! A faint sound came from the chariot, and a tall figure appeared in front of the Yu Frontier Guards. No one knew how he came to appear there, but when this figure entered the field of view, everyone had the same 2 words appear on their minds. Marshal Yu. Marshal Yu was finally personally taking action. Faint blue long hair swayed in the wind. His features seemed to be carved from stone. His eyes were a faint blue. There was a faint smile on his lips, and he seemed to exude a strange charisma. This was Marshal Yu. Having already reached martial level, he was one of the strongest in the 100 Savage realm, someone that countless people revered and respected. Marshal Yu raised his head, and his expression was normal, as though that terrifying dark red ball of flame did not exist. Just as everyone's attention was focused on this great battle, no one noticed that Luo Li, who had been lying beside Xiao Gua, and Liang Feng had silently stood up. There was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. Then his figure started to fade as though he was disappearing into the void. Beside him, a beautiful figure seemed to materialize. A peerlessly beautiful face slowly became clear. She opened her eyes. Marshal Yu. Zuomo's pupils contracted, but at this time, he was at his peak. He did not feel any terror. That great and motionless figure below stimulated his fighting spirit to burn brighter. Come. The 10 suns moved even faster, and Zuomo's mind became even clearer. His eyes were tightly locked onto Marshal Yu and did not move away. As the distance between them closed, An imperceptible look of shock flashed through Marshal Ye's eyes. Now was the time. Zuomo's figure seemed to oppose the rules of the world, and suddenly came to a complete halt in the air. There was no buffer between the extreme high-speed movement and the extreme stillness. His position was extremely strange, his chest and abdomen sucked in, his body bowed like a bow. His spread arms were brought together in front of his body. Kill. His forehead suddenly lit up. A golden energy rippled across his face. The golden flames suddenly shrunk into the center like they were grabbed by an invisible hand. A golden pillar that was about 7 zhang thick smashed towards Marshal Yu at an astounding speed. The 10 golden crows on the pillar were all at different positions. The golden crow battering ram. Unlike the loud noise just now, the golden pillar was silent when it moved as though it was intangible. Marshal Ye's pupils suddenly contracted. A thread of a smile appeared on his lips. Good attack. He reached out with his right hand and pushed towards the golden pillar descending from the sky. Hiss. A strange howl filled the air. The people on the ground feel a strong suction force come from the sky that caused them to almost trip and fall. All of them jumped in fright and steadied themselves. Air flashed across their bodies and gathered in the sky. They almost thought they were inside a windstorm. If they were watching from the sky, they could see it more clearly. The air from a radius of 100 li around Marshal Ye's raised right hand was gathering. If one looked from afar, they would see it was a great funnel. The power of one martial level attack was this powerful. Zhu Ku and the others had pale faces. They had been shocked by Lin Qian's sword strike, but right now, they found that the distance between general and martial level was unable to be crossed. Compared to Marshal Ye's blow, Lin Qian's sword strike was like a firefly compared to the moon. There was an innate difference between the two's power. Those that were less brave felt their knees weaken and almost sank to the ground. Zuo did not know what other people were thinking. At this moment, his mind was completely clear and unaffected. He also saw the power of Marshal Ye's attack, but he wasn't afraid at all. He felt excited. Unusually excited. Martial level. So this was martial level. His calm eyes was filled with the light of excitement and determination. His hands pressed together, and emo matrices lit up on the golden pillar. The 10 golden crows became even brighter in color, and the golden pillar seemed to slow down as though it was moving through water. Marshal Yu had not thought that Zuo would have transformation to the attack at this time. He could not disguise his shock this time. Zuo could not maintain his calm. This was his strongest move. His mind was excited and he could not help but shout soundlessly, "Go Golden Crow Battering Ram!" Chapter 645 Life-Death Lock Separation Sword Clang. A thick deep sound seemed to burst in people's minds. With a deep rumbling, it passed through their bodies and numbed their extremities. The hair on their bodies stood on end. Time seemed to stop in this moment. The Golden Crow Battering Ram stopped 20 zhang away from Marshal Ye's head. Pia, a crack suddenly appeared on the glittering surface of the Golden Crow Battering Ram. Then several more appeared. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks quickly spread across the surface of the Golden Crow Battering Ram. Boom. The Golden Crow Battering Ram suddenly gave off a blinding light. As it exploded, a domineering and burning presence exploded. At the same time, a sharp light flashed across Marshal Ye's eyes. His upraised right hand pushed up again. The collision of two great powers was like two meteors crashing together. The light was as bright as that of a sun. The air within hundreds of li roared and raged with turbulent gales. Everyone staring at the clash only saw a blinding white light. The thundering explosion caused their ears to ring, and the world seemed silent. However, they could not hear anything clearly. Many people reflexively gaped in horror. Those that were more powerful and skilled forced themselves to calm down. They detected the incoming danger. A shockwave rushed at them like a steel wall. Bam, bam, bam. The MO that met it first were unable to react before they seemed to be launched with a heavy hammer. They threw up blood as their bodies were thrown back. The terrifying wave of air was unstoppable. The elite U Frontier Guard forces were like dry branches tossed in the wind, and unable to resist at all. Zhu Ku and the others changed expression. They shielded the princesses as they retreated. Those that were slower to react and were swept away by the wave of air. It was alright if they escaped with the momentum of the terrifying power. Some people wanted to use their strength to steady themselves. Cracks sounded. For these people, the bones inside their body could not withstand such a strong power and shattered. It was like the apocalypse had come. Everyone was stunned. Their minds were shook and their faces ashen. The power of one attack left all of them were stunned. No one noticed that a light ethereal figure marched against the gust of air, against the flow of people. The steely wave of air was like tofu in front of this beautiful figure. It did not cause any obstruction for her. Like a nimble fish, her body shook and she burrowed into the wave of air. Marshal Yu narrowed his eyes. His right hand that was now placed behind his back was trembling slightly. He was extremely shocked. Ever since he had reached martial level he had not fought. No one dared to. In the 100 Savage of the Dark, martial level existences were the apex. Even though he focused more time on other affairs, he had not neglected his own cultivation. He actually felt a threat of pressure from Xiao Emoge's attack. If it wasn't that his right hand was still uncontrollably trembling, he would not believe this reality. 10 Crow Celestial Domain. Was it really that powerful? He felt uncertain. In front of a marshal, the domain of a general level should not be a threat at all. But why did Xiao Emoge's 10 Crow Celestial Domain make him feel pressured? Was it because of Shen power? As the thought flashed through Marshal Ye's mind, his eyes lit up. It definitely was Shen power. The light and the gusts of air did not affect him at all. He remained motionless in the air like rock. He raised his head to look at the black dot in the sky. A smile came to the corner of his mouth. Compared to Marshal Ye's barely ruffled appearance, Zuemo was left in a much sorrier state after the clash. Smoke wafted off of him, and his clothing was in tatters. Large and small wounds covered his body. The dark red light around him was dim, and the 10 suns seemed to have lost their glow. The attack just now didn't just drain all of his power. It had caused him significant injuries. His face was pale and the sun script on his forehead was dim. The light from the other 9 sun scripts were also gone. Without the 10 suns absorbing the Shen power, the Shen power was left completely unchecked. It now rampaged through his body. Zuemo forced down the blood that rose to his throat and stared coldly at Marshal Yu. You are the only one I have ever seen to have such presence at general level, Marshal Yu said idly. His tone was filled with praise. Zuemo did not speak. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he was unable to. His body seemed to be boiling right now. The Shen power rampaged through his body, and the attack just now had actually caused a crack to appear in the seal on the Sun Crystal Seed. At the battlefield of sealed extinction, the ancient corpse had said that Zuemo wasn't able to absorb the power of the Sun Crystal Seed because it was too powerful, and he would even be wounded, so the corpse had sealed the seed's power. Zuemo had never expected the attack just now would cause a crack to appear in the Sun Crystal Seed's seal. A hot flow that almost melted him slowly escaped from the Sun Crystal Seed. This hot flow was minuscule, but once it appeared, the messy Shen power inside Zuemo's body suddenly quieted. It was the first time Zuemo had ever encountered a situation where his Shen power would stop moving. A strange feeling rose. At this time, an extremely vicious and icy flow suddenly flowed along his back and into his body. Zuemo's expression changed slightly, and his heart skipped a beat. Anti-Dragon Claw. Damn it, at such an important time, the rebellious Anti-Dragon Claw actually came out to meddle. The 3,000 threads of worry did not move at all. No matter how Zuemo tried, it didn't seem to be able to do anything against this icy flow. Marshal Yu slowly flew up until he was at the same height as Zuemo. He looked wryly at the motionless Zuemo and said idly, "What? You only have the power for one attack? It is not realistic to think that you can defeat me with this one attack." His eyes were sharp, and he could see that it was a mess inside Zuemo's body. Not just fighting, Zuemo didn't even have the power to move a finger right now. Marshal Yu smiled faintly. His hand spread and he grasped at Zuemo. The air around Zuemo suddenly solidified. Zuemo was unable to move. Having captured the other alive, Marshal Yu was in a much better mood. Xiao Emogu cultivated Shen power, but he was far weaker in terms of power. He only had the power for one attack. Thinking of the gains this time, he disregarded his losses. With the Shun power cultivation method in hand, he would have a chance at a breakthrough. More importantly, with Shun power, he would have the hope of breaking into king level. King level. These two words caused his mind to heat up. He wanted to return immediately and study Shun power. But he was a martial and he had strong self-control, so he repressed the impulse. He smiled and then pulled his hand back. Zuomo's figure flew towards Martial Yu. Zuomo immediately panicked. At this time, a serene singing voice seemed to come from the unseen ground. Why is life a joy? Why is death a sorrow? Two hearts separated by yin and yang, bound together by a chain. Countless sword lights blossomed. In a flash, there was a sea of them. They seemed to materialize out of nowhere. They budded, bloomed, and then withered at a stunning rate. A beautiful and cool figure stood like a sword in the sea of flowers. When Zuomo saw the newcomer, he was startled. And then he reacted. It was Luo Li Shi's sword spirit. Had Luo Li Shi woken up? In this moment, Zuomo was filled with joy. Luo Li's awakening meant that he had comprehended the life-death lock. In the sea of flowers, Wu Li's figure was as cool as a sword, but that added to her charisma. Where was Luo Li Shi? Zuomo could not see Luo Li anywhere, and was slightly puzzled. But then he started to panic. Even if Luo Li Shi had comprehended the life-death lock, he definitely was not a match for Martial Yu. Damn it! He was going to suffer great losses in business this time. Zuomo did not have any of the fighting spirit he had previously. He wanted to gather his power to tell Luo Li Shi to run. But his body did not move. It was completely out of his control, and he couldn't make a sound. Martial Yu was slightly shocked. You have some skill. These beautiful flowers were made from countless sword essences. Layered together, it was like a beautiful sea of flowers. Flower sea sword domain? He smiled dismissively. Inside he pondered the origins of this Xiao Mo Gu. His subordinates were astounding. But then he realized a thought. Xiao Mo Gu was in his hands. If he did not willingly submit, then he could set a Jinji in the other. Martial Yu did not fear that Xiao Mo Gu would rebel. As to these powerful subordinates of Xiao Mo Gu, they would naturally now belong to him. When he thought of this, his mood became even better. The sword essence sea in front of him became even more joyful to look at. Willie floated in the middle of the sword sea and looked at Martial Yu with a cool and clear gaze. She suddenly closed her eyes and her lips moved. Life-death lock separation sword. Martial Yu's heart jumped and a feeling of danger rose. Pia, a flower suddenly shattered. As the petals fell, a tiny red chain was pulled out of the flower, and each of the petals and lengthened. The sea of flowers shattered. The red chains crisscrossed and layered over one another. In a flash, countless red chains of varying thickness winded back and forth like a sea of red snakes. The red chains shot at Martial Yu at a stunning speed. What was strangest was that these chains were completely made from sword essence. And this strange sword essence that was not living or dead, nor yin or yang. Even Martial Yu, who had seen many things, had never seen such a strange sword essence before. What sword essence was this? The underestimation and dismissal that Martial Yu held before was swept away. His expression became grave. This sword essence was extremely strange. He had a strong feeling if he came into contact with these sword essences, the outcome would not be good. He could not say why this was. This presence that was not living nor dead. And between yin and yang was a strange existence that seemed to waver between life and death. He detected danger. Chapter 646. Chained together, it really was strange. How long had it been since he had felt danger? Danger. Ever since he stepped into martial level, this word seemed to be unconnected to him. When the presence of danger came at him, even he blanked for a moment. However, Martial Yu quickly reacted. With a high hum, a sharp green sword light penetrated the sea of flowers and flew into his hands. The long green sword was narrow and carved with ancient scripts. This was not a flying sword that Xiaozhi used, but a mo weapon, a mo sword. With the sword in his hand, all of Martial Yu's hesitation and uncertainty was swept away. The sword in his hand was called the Green Carp Tongue Sword, and was one of his mo weapons. It was ranked above the Black Heart treasure coins. The Green Carp Tongue Sword had been obtained after he had killed an enemy back when he was a general. At the beginning, Its quality was average, and paled in comparison from its power today. He had tried all the ways he could think of, refining it with all kinds of methods available to him. Its power continued to increase, and it jumped into the ranks of Earth MO weapons to become one of the most famous MO weapons of the present era. The green carp tongue sword was forged from the tongue of a rotten carp MO. The rotten carp MO was a kind of MO that lived deep in the sea. Their strongest organ was their green tongues, which were hard and sharp, able to pierce through any object. After their death, the only part that would not rot was their green tongue. That was how the name of their clan came to be. The green carp tongue sword slashed at the flower sea, split in two. The sky full of red chains decayed when touched by the green light. The green light flashed, and a deep and black fissure appeared in the sky. A sword that could rend space. A dark and rotten presence came from the crack. The flora that still remained on the ground quickly withered. The sea of flowers quickly wilted and withered. In a flash, the endless sea of flowers became dried and withered branches. The most important reason the green carp tongue sword was able to rank among the Earth MO weapons was that it could rend apart space. Marshal Yu had found an ancient jinji from the remnants of a record. It was able to rend space and connect to rotten jia. And the most important material to forge this jinji was the tongue of a rotten carp MO. For an expert like Marshal Yu, once the crux was identified, everything else wasn't a problem to figure out. The green carp tongue sword was forged according to this method. The rotten jia was a strange land. It wasn't large but was filled with monsters. What was most famous was the unique miasma there. It had and corrosive properties. It was one of the greatest poisons in the world. It was even troublesome for marshals if they came into contact with it. If one was weaker than marshal level, they would be immediately killed. As the corrosive miasma flooded out of the crack in space, Wuli's sword essence flower sea quickly withered. Those tiny red chain links quickly melted like snow under the sun. Wuli's calm gaze didn't change, as though what was happening was within her predictions. She bent down to touch the withered flowers, and sang in a clear voice, "Life not life, death not death, my heart will not separate." The dried flower sea on the ground suddenly started to absorb the rotten miasma. In a flash, it seemed to have taken in nutrients and bloomed again. The flowers that had absorbed the corrosive miasma became even brighter, and the red chains that had melted took form again, this time with rainbow-colored marks scattered throughout. A sweet taste filled the air. "Interesting," Marshal Yu said with a change in his expression. In his view, this astounding change was extraordinary. As a marshal, he had better judgment than other experts. With a glance, he saw that Wuli's cultivation was a strange one related to life and death. This surprised him. Life and death was one of the most profound and eternal questions. A method with life and death as the core principle was always cryptic and difficult to cultivate. But any method that dared to use the principle of life and death was always a powerful one. He recognized the danger and became cautious. The other's presence was very strange. She brimmed with life, but it seemed to have been drawn and transformed from death energy. There were two completely opposite presences, life and death, on her. This strange state meant that he was unable to accurately gauge the other's strength. Marshal Yu understood. The corrosive miasma would not threaten this mysterious woman. It would only become fertilizer for the sea of flowers. The corrosive miasma was a kind of death energy formed after decaying. The other had the ability to turn life to death, and change death to life. The sea of flowers rippled and sword essence moved. Suddenly, many slender chains appeared at Marshal Yu's feet and wrapped tightly around him. Marshal Yu snorted coldly. The chain around his legs immediately flew apart. Yet at this time, the sea of flowers started to slowly spin with Wuli as the center. The sea of flowers was becoming an enormous whirlpool. Clank! The sound of an enormous chain sounded. A great chain slowly rose from under her feet. With every movement upwards, there was the sound of the chain trembling. The chain was thicker than an adult arm. It was completely black and covered with red MO matrices. Marshal Yu's expression was grave, and he threw the green carp tongue sword into the air. When the green carp tongue sword flew into the sky, it turned into a slender green carp. Suddenly, a burst of thunder sounded, and electrical snakes danced. Rain droplets poured down. The curtain of rain covered the world as mist spread. These droplets of rain seemed gentle, yet the sea of flowers suddenly slowed under the great rain. Martial yes, rain domain of no return. Each rain droplet contained great power, and was so sharp it could penetrate armor. The ground immediately became riddled in holes. However, while the sea of flowers slowed in its spinning under the rain domain of no return, it was still blooming brightly. Willie looked indifferently at Martial Yu as the chain slowly rose from behind her back. If Martial Yu could enter the sea of flowers, he would find that under Willie's feet, at the other end of the sea of flowers, there was a transparent figure, Luo Li. He was standing at the other end of the sea of flowers, the chain moving down from his back. Chained together. This move was called chain together. Zuemo didn't have the time to pay attention to the fight. The situation inside his body was the strangest at this time. That thread of hot flow from the sun crystal seed immediately intimidated the Shen power that had messed up his body like a king conquering the world. Yet when the dark and vicious energy of the anti-dragon claw also burrowed into Zuomo's body, it was like a furious lion that leapt over. The cold and vicious energy of the anti-dragon claw did not show weakness and welcomed the confrontation. It was like a storm. The two powers were evenly matched as they fought. The Zuomo's body became the battlefield for these two presences. For a while, the left side of Zuomo's body would be extremely cold while his right side was burning. These two powers were like two monsters inside Zuomo's body. Zuomo's Shen power didn't dare to move, like a frightened child. Everywhere they passed, his body would be left extremely damaged. Fortunately, Zuomo still had the green vine mystical water. This droplet of green vine mystical water was intelligent, and it continued to heal Zuomo's body. But the next event caused Zuomo's soul to almost fly out of his body. As though it was stimulated by the anti-dragon claw, more hot flows came from the sun crystal seed. And in response, the anti-dragon claw, the peerless Mo weapon, did not back off. Threads of cold and vicious energy continued to burrow into his body from his back. The two sides started to fight intensely again. Zuomo's face was white. Heavens, if they continued, Ji wouldn't have enough green vine mystical water, no matter how much Ji had. If this continued, his body would definitely be ripped apart by these two presences. But what Zuomo hadn't expected was that the hot flows from the sun crystal seed quickly gained the upper hand. It clearly was stronger. Zuomo sighed in relief. If the two continued to fight, he would most likely die quickly. But the following developments caused Zuomo to panic again. The hot flows of the sun crystal seed that had the upper hand left scorched dust behind in its path. Even the green vine mystical water was unable to repair it. Zuomo understood. The hot flows from the sun crystal seed were not something his body could tolerate right now. Compared to the present situation, the previous situation when the two sides had been evenly matched was much better. Little anti, give a bit more cold energy, a little bit more. Zuomo furiously thought of ways to help. But the cold energy didn't increase, and were being destroyed by the sun crystal seed. Zuomo, who had been praying furiously, saw this, and was enraged. Useless person. You couldn't even defeat an immature fireball, you Sky Missouri weapon my ass. Zuomo swore inside. When he thought this, the anti-dragon claw on his back suddenly vibrated furiously. It seemed to have heard Zuomo's curses. A vast vicious presence that was many times stronger than before furiously charged into Zuomo's body, as though it was furious. The 3,000 threads of worry seemed to detect that this was a crucial time, and had loosened its restraint on the anti-dragon claw. This burst of energy from the anti-dragon claw was extremely strong. When it charged into Zuomo's body, it scattered the hot flows from the sun crystal seed. Zuomo felt the anti-dragon claw continue to tremble on his back. Zuomo seemed to have a feeling that the anti-dragon claw was a brawny large man that was now roaring smugly with laughter. But Zuomo didn't cheer and almost wailed. The presence of the anti-dragon claw had scattered the hot flows of the sun crystal seed, and was now rampaging through his body. The vicious killing intent was now also rapidly destroying his body. Damn it! Zuomo wanted to cry. Luckily, the sun crystal seed was unable to tolerate defeat, and another burning flow of heat came out of the crack, and leaped towards the vicious energies of the anti-dragon claw. The two forces teetered back and forth. Zuomo's body became the battlefield where the two forces fought a tug of war. All kinds of great pain tortured Zhuomo's nerves, but he was unable to move or cry out. In front of these two great vicious things, Zhuomo was so minuscule he was an infant. But he did not give up. Even if it was painful to his bones, he gritted his teeth and maintained his calm to focus his attention. He knew that if he was to find a way to survive the battle of these two great and viscous forces, he had to be calm. He didn't remember what time it was, just as Zhuomo was becoming numb. A chance arrived. Chapter 647. Transformation. Nothing could rival the brutal presence of the anti-dragon claw. Not even the wasteland beast that Zhuomo could summon using the archaic wasteland sacrificial art. But this brutal presence was nothing compared to its power in the past. According to Pu Yao and Wei, the anti-dragon claw had been weakened for thousands of years by the 3,000 threads of worry. This caused Zhuomo to desire and admire what presence the anti-dragon claw had in the past. The brutal energies of the anti-dragon claw furiously flooded into Zhuomo's body. The sun crystal seed was stimulated by this. A thick, almost tangible, flow of heat poured out from the crack as it slowly advanced. One was an unparalleled ancient and vicious object. The other was a great treasure of the world, one cold, one hot. When the two forces came into contact, it was like cold water poured into hot oil. In front of these two terrifying powers, Zhuomo's steel-hard emo physique that was fragile as paper. In a flash, it was covered in holes. If it wasn't for the green vine mystical water's healing properties, he would have already turned to dust long ago. But as the battle heated up, the positions of the two sides steadied, and they gathered near each of the 10 sun matrices on Zhuomo's body. These 10 sun matrices of the 10 Crow celestial apparatus Mo physique were naturally attuned to the sun crystal seed, and acted as wells where Shen power naturally gathered. The sun crystal seed's power flowed into the 10 Mo matrices as a result. Taking advantage of this, the cold and brutal energies of the anti-dragon claw quickly took over all of Zhuomo's body, and started to furiously attack these 10 sun Mo matrices. If someone was to touch Zhuomo's body now, they would find to their shock that his entire body was freezing, but the 10 sun Mo matrices burned like hot metal. As the battle intensified, even the Shen power in Zhuomo's sealed right hand was attracted and entered this great battle. Zhuomo himself was left extremely weak. The powers inside his body rampaged out of control. His body was a mess and heavily injured. Yet at this moment, Zhuomo found a chance. There was another power in Zhuomo's body that he had always forgot. The soul-setting divine light. This divine light came from Wei's succession. Other than placing Jinji and Gu Minggong, Zhuomo had never used it again. It was not that Zhuomo had a low opinion of its power, but the succession of the soul-setting divine light was too ancient and too difficult to understand. Even Wei could not speak of the specifics. The divine light itself was strange, and Zhuomo didn't even know where to begin studying it. What he had not expected was that the soul-setting divine light slowly emerged out of the 3,000 threads of worry during this moment of great danger. These two terrifying powers, 3,000 threads of worry and the soul-setting divine light, had not destroyed each other. Zhuomo was not surprised about the 3,000 threads of worry. Something that could restrain the anti-dragon claw had to be a treasure on par with the anti-dragon claw. This divine light that originated from the dawn of the world also was unaffected. Zhuomo immediately realized that the soul-setting divine light was a treasure on the same level as the anti-dragon claw and the sun crystal seed. When the soul-setting divine light burrowed out of the 3,000 threads of worry, it slowly swam like a rainbow fish in Zhuomo's torn-up body. Forced to desperate straits, Zhuomo's heart jumped when he discovered the soul-setting divine light. Opportunity. Right now, all other powers in his body were completely suppressed by the sun crystal seed and the anti-dragon claw, so he could not use them. The 3,000 threads of worry were not suppressed, but because of the uniqueness of its power, it was of no help in this battle. The sudden discovery of the soul-setting divine light was akin to a life-saving herb to Zhuomo. Zhuomo immediately controlled his emotions and pushed down the joy and excitement he felt. He thought back to how he had previously activated the soul-setting divine light. As expected, when his thoughts shifted, the soul-setting divine light immediately stopped where it was. Zhuomo was joyed. It seemed that he could control the soul-setting divine light. Given his present helplessness, a power that he could control was what he needed the most. Even if this power was tiny, he would not give it up. A power that he could control meant that he did not have to wait for his fate to be determined by others. He carefully controlled the soul-setting divine light. Because it had been too long since he had used it, and he wasn't familiar to start with, his control was extremely crude at first. Zuomo was not demotivated. He usually seemed to be uncaring, but the more dangerous the moment, the clearer his mind was and the more patience he had. The conflict between the Sun Crystal Seed and the Anti-Dragon Claw reached a white-hot level. The burning flow that poured out from the Sun Crystal Seed continued to flood into the 10 Sun Mo matrices. The 10 Sun Mo matrices were quickly filled up. They were filled with power like 10 balls of flame. Because the power that was added was too strong, the Mo matrices were completely awakened. The awakened Mo matrix actually concealed its light. The burning heat turned to darkness. Light and dark, they were twins. Zuomo seemed to understand when he saw this scene. The power in every Sun Mo matrix far surpassed the limits of what the Mo matrix could tolerate. If there was no outside force that reduced the power, the Sun Mo matrix would not be able to tolerate the overflow and would explode. It would only end up in one way for Zuomo, dying in an explosion of blood and gore. Fortunately, there was the Anti-Dragon Claw. The cold and brutal energy of the Anti-Dragon Claw surrounded the 10 Sun matrices from all directions. The stimulated Sun Crystal Seed realized that the Sun matrices was a battlefield where it held the advantage. There held the home ground advantage. If it caused these Sun matrices to explode, then it would undoubtedly lose this advantage. Therefore, the Sun matrices were simulated on a path that Zuomo never thought about. Evolution. The power of the Sun Crystal Seed flooded every part of the Sun matrix. The power that was several levels above the Sun Mo matrix repeatedly cleansed the Mo matrix, causing it to change. Like grass sprouting, the complex Mo matrix silently grew. It was the first time Zuomo observed the growth of a Mo matrix. The Anti-Dragon Claw is also intelligent. It responded to the transformation of the Sun Mo matrix. A layer of frost appeared on Zuomo in the areas around the Sun matrix. This layer of frost was not white or blue, but a faint gray. A portion of the Anti-Dragon Claw's brutal energy started to heal Zuomo's almost ground-up flesh. Yet the Anti-Dragon Claw's icy power was too brutal. Even if it was trying to heal, it felt like thousands of little icy knives cutting repeatedly into Zuomo's flesh. Zuomo endured the heart-boring pain as he carefully controlled the soul-setting divine light. He hid it in a corner and waited patiently for a chance. He realized that this moment was not the best time to act. The Sun Crystal Seed and the Anti-Dragon Claw were all accumulating power. The following clash would most likely be even more intense than before. Zuomo's Mo physique was sturdy, but in front of something as vicious as the Anti-Dragon Claw, it was not enough. Large amounts of blood and flesh disappeared like melting snow in front of the brutal energies, leaving only the blood and flesh that could absorb the brutal energy. This led to a process in which Zuomo's blood and flesh was completely transformed. The strongest flesh quickly expanded and thrived, the weakest rapidly shrank and died. They continued to struggle in the ocean of brutal energy, and gradually stabilized. No one noticed that a gray Mo matrix had appeared inside Zuomo's body, and it was slowly growing, creeping across his body like ivy. The gray Mo matrices were completely different than the Mo matrices he had before. Some dense scales appeared on the edges of the Mo matrix. If one looked closely, they would find that these fine scales were extremely similar in color and shape to the scales of the Anti-Dragon Claw, but much smaller. The heavy brutal energy filled the space one zhang around Zuomo, and seemed to be one with the Anti-Dragon Claw. But outside of this one zhang, the presence of the energy was completely absent, not allowing anyone present to detect it. Everyone's gaze was deeply attracted to the battle between Marshal Yu and Wu Li. Chained together, Wu Li's slender fingers pointed at Marshal Yu. Her cool gaze contained determination and fighting spirit. Under the sea of flowers, Luo Li was reflected. While his body was transparent, there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. Almost at the same time, the two of them spoke. Wu Li's voice was cool and as hard as a sword. Together. Luo Li's voice was a murmur and gentle as water. Together. Whoosh. A thick chain suddenly flew out from under Wu Li's feet, like an ancient snake that shot at Marshall Yu. The air was filled with the sound of the chain clanking. The whole of the flower sea was trembling. A strange presence that was hard to describe moved into the surroundings as the chain clanked. This was. Zhu Ke's expression was uncertain. This is. The middle-aged attendant exclaimed, but she suddenly stopped as her face became completely bloodless. Xia suddenly raised his head. His breathing was so heavy it could be heard clearly through the thick armor. This was the presence of life and death. Marshall Yu's eyes were filled with shock and gravity. This snake-like metal chain was made from two opposing powers, life and death. If he was not seeing it with his own eyes, he would not believe it. Life and death. Two diametrically opposed powers, yet they were merged together so beautifully. It really was fantastical. What method was this? Who was that woman? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, but in a moment, his mind became clear again. This chain that was woven from life and death was one of the highest powers that he had ever seen. It was so exquisite, so fantastical, it was hard to believe. As a marshal, even Marshall Yu sighed and praised it. But such an exquisite and creative power still had weaknesses. It was not condensed enough. The other should have just comprehended it a short time ago. Even though they had understood to the crux of the ability, they lacked practice and the power was too weak. It was akin to a very powerful seedling. Maybe it would be powerful when it matured, but the seedling that had just germinated was thin and delicate. Power came from methods, but also from an accumulation of experience. Compared to this method of life and death that was undoubtedly a top skill, Marshall Yu did not have anything like that. But in terms of accumulation, the other was far lacking. He had never thought that he would be forced to such a state by such a young woman. Marshall Yu smiled, full of self-scorn. However, someone that could comprehend such a wondrous method was qualified to be his opponent. The smile on his face gradually faded away. His expression became solemn and devout as he raised the green carp-tongue sword. The countless hardship and obstacles on his path of cultivation flashed past his mind's eye. His mind suddenly broadened. A figure stood with a sword under a drizzle of rain. I will let you see the true power of this martial levels. Rain domain of no return. Chapter 648. No return. The feeling of extreme hot and cold mixing together made him want to throw up blood. But Zuoyamo did not have the time to throw up blood. He was furiously learning how to manipulate the soul-setting divine light. Learning as he went was not something that he wanted to do, but he had no choice at this time. The soul-setting divine light was his lifeboat. Other than this, he had nothing else to respond with. The soul-setting divine light. The light that accompanied the dawn of the world. It was like a little multicolored fish, sometimes obedient and sometimes mischievous. Regardless of the urgencies Zuoyamo felt, he could only calm down and experience it. This was a multicolored world. All kinds of colored light were gathered in this extremely slender divine light. The birth of all colors of light when the world had began were included in this little divine light. It was not of the five elements, nor did it belong to yin or yang, and had nothing to do with Yao, Mo, and Xiuzha. When Zuomo's mind was immersed in the soul-setting divine light, an ocean of chaotic information followed him. What was most attention-catching was an ancient presence that struck at his mind. In this moment, he seemed to see the primordial chaos, the dawn of the world. He knew that this was an illusion. The soul-setting divine light might have a sliver of an ancient presence, but much of it had disappeared after being passed down for so many years. It would be good if just 0.1% remained. Just how much information was at the dawn of the world? Could a divine light hold all that? But even this 0.1% was precious enough. The dawn of the world was the beginning of all methods. Just comprehending a little bit would be of endless benefit. On this, no matter if the person was Yao, Mo, or Xiuzha, they were all the same. Zuoyamo did not have any methods of comprehending this presence from the dawn of the world. Even if it was the core of all methods, even if it was the most precious part of the soul-setting divine light. In such an emergency, wasn't trying to comprehend it just seeking death? The practical little Mo Gu was furiously pondering the use of the divine light, and how to manipulate the divine light. Under the threat of death, a person's potential would be more easily uncovered. Zuomo actually understood a bit more of the soul-setting divine light that usually was so hard to understand. The most powerful ability of the soul-setting divine light was setting. It could set everything in the world, and this was the reason for its name. Zuomo could not understand the reason, but this was not a time to study the reason. It was fine as long as he knew how to use it. Zuomo used the soul-setting divine light to sweep a tiny bit of the brutal energy of the anti-dragon claw. As he had expected, this vicious energy froze where it was. This caused Zuomo's confidence to rise. He tested it on a tiny hot flow from the sun crystal seed. It also was a success. He suppressed the impulse he felt and patiently waited for an opportunity. The soul-setting divine light was a wonder. But this fragment of soul-setting divine light was extremely small. Zuomo suspected that it would not be able to set a great deal of power. It could only be used at a critical moment, an important place. The MO matrix was growing and changing. He knew that this was the MO matrix evolving. Zuomo's body was being rapidly changed and strengthened by the two enemy powers even if he was not willing. At this time, Zuomo was like an experienced hunter. He had already found the weakness, and right now he only had to wait patiently for a chance to deliver a fatal strike. The evolution of the MO matrix was very fast. The sun scripts were completely changed. 10 lifelike suns floated on the surface of Zuomo's body. They were like suns embedded in Zuomo's body, especially the sun at his forehead. It was like a miniature sun that revolved without end. The number of paths between the 10 suns had multiplied several times. It was profound and complex as the paths crossed. If someone slightly weaker looked at them, they would find they would become dizzy. The dense scales that had been near Zuomo's MO matrix had disappeared, and the new MO matrix sank under his skin so that it could not be seen. But someone familiar with Zuomo would notice that his figure had changed slightly. Zuomo's original figure could not be considered to be brawny, but muscles were clearly defined. Right now his figure had become much thinner. Only Zuomo knew that his body was multiple times as strong now. His body had been tempered again. The weak blood and flesh had been eliminated by the vicious energies of the anti-dragon claw. Each bone, every sinew, every muscle, was now multiple times stronger than before. The refinement was even more complete than the time with the shifting star sands. If this had occurred at any other time, Zuomo would be smiling so wide his eyes would be squinting, but right now, he did not feel any joy. He suspected that the completion of the refinement meant that the final conflict between the two powers was about to start. Zuomo's guess was correct. Wind blew and there was a fine drizzle of rain. The curtain of rain seemed endless and covered thousands of li. The red threads were clear and transparent with a springy presence. There was no darkness. It was warm and unspeakably comfortable. Under the curtain of rain, those that were weak showed intoxicated expressions. They unconsciously released their MO weapons, dropping them on the ground. The sound of the weapons merged into this drizzle, and the owners did not realize they had done so. More and more people released the MO weapons in their hands, and became intoxicated in the rain. The MO skill that Qi Diaoyu was most skilled in was illusory sound. He detected the power of this rain and his expression changed. Unconsciously, the water droplets around him sped up. With a sharp howl, it seemed to break through the curtain of rain. The curtain of rain was these same droplets, but the sound of the drizzle was soft and intoxicating. The sharp howl seemed to burrow into the sticky water, and then disappeared. The 3 droplets of water seemed to have gotten drunk themselves. They slowed down as they flew until they moved at the speed of a turtle. Qi Diaoyu's face was ashen. For the first time, he felt helplessness. He didn't have any power to fight back. The rain domain of no return. He murmured with a complicated expression. As expected, there is no return. Between the threads of rain, a kind of lazy power unconsciously burrowed into his body. Qi Diaoyu felt his consciousness seem to move slower. His body became heavier. It felt very comfortable, and he did not wanting to move. He showed a strange expression of intoxication. No return, no return. The moment the curtain of rain appeared, the sound of clanking of the chains imperceptibly paused. Then the chain which had charged towards Marshal Yu, like a dragon, seemed to have entered water. An invisible power pressured it from all directions. The metal chain suddenly lit up with a mix of white and black light. The rain shook and the chain sped up. Marshal Yu smiled slightly and dismissed it. The curtain of rain did not change, but the chain that had just sped up quickly slowed down as though it was now pulling something heavy. The black and white lights quickly faded within the rain curtain. In a blink, the black and white lights were consumed. The metal chain that had been so formidable and unstoppable suddenly became slow like a sleeping babe floating in the air. The sword essence flower seemed to slow down until it appeared to have stopped. Willy's cool expression finally changed. The domain of a marshal. It was this powerful. This endless rain in front of her was something that could disrupt even the march of life and death. In terms of profoundness of power, the rain domain of no return was lacking compared to the metal chain. However, the power disparity was too large. Luoli had just comprehended the life and death lock. The time was too short. Marshal Yu had went from colonel to brigadier, to general, and then into marshal level. Each step had been set on a firm foundation, and the amount of power he had accumulated was almost unimaginable. When power reached a certain level, it would cause an innate change. No matter how exquisite the together chain was, it wasn't a threat to absolute power. One could defeat 10. This was a weakness. No matter how talented they were, they could not take a shortcut on this path of accumulation. Marshal Yu found their biggest weakness. He smiled faintly. The other side did have talent to force him to such a point. But this was the end. Just at this time, a shocking ripple came from behind him. His smile froze on his face. Before he could turn around, boom, something seemed to explode behind him. A ripple that almost caused him to lose the urge to fight exploded suddenly from behind him. He turned back to look in shock. A bright sun burned in the rain. Having made their final transformations, the collision between the two powers was intense. The brutal energies of the anti-dragon claw had turned into black serpents that roared as they leapt at the 10 suns. The sun crystal seed that was in complete control of the 10 crow celestial domain suddenly released a burning light. The serpents that came close turned to dust. But there were many of the black serpents that were made from the brutal energies. They continued to move without any care. The battle suddenly entered the most vicious stage. This was a full-scale head-on clash of power. The brutal energies of the serpents charged at the 10 suns like a relentless tide. The 10 suns moved across Womo's body. The sun crystal seed had actually activated the 10 crow celestial domain in response. Boom. Golden light suddenly came from around Wumo. It was like sun that suddenly bloomed in the rain. Before the rain could come near the golden light, it evaporated. The sun suddenly turned dark. Marshal Yu reflexively raised his head. He saw the blurry sky that had been covered by the rain was now a dark red, as though the sky was aflame. The entire sky became dark red, and the area was even larger than his curtain of rain. This was. Suddenly, a dot of light flew out of the golden shield on Xiao Mo's body into the sky. The curtain of rain could not impede the dot of light. It grew as it flew, and in a blink, it hung in the sky. A sun. Several more dots of light flew from Wumo's body into the sky. In a flash, 10 suns were spread out in the sky. 10 crow celestial domain. This was the 10 crow celestial domain. Marshal Yu almost didn't believe his own eyes. No matter how powerful the 10 crow celestial domain was, it was only the top dog in general level. Compared to martial domains, it was a whole level below. There was an innate difference in level. How could the 10 crow celestial domain break through his rain domain of no return? This was impossible. Before he could understand everything happening in front of him, an unprecedented feeling of danger rose without any warning. His heart jumped wildly. Chapter 649. Sun Crystal Seeds 10 Crow Celestial Domain. This feeling of danger came without any warning and approached so fast that Marshal Yu wasn't able to react. In truth, he was unable to react. The pressure that the 10 Crow Celestial Domain gave him was suffocating. A strange, unfamiliar feeling of suffocation. How long had it been since he felt such pressure? He didn't remember, but he was shocked and intimidated by this strange feeling of pressure. Wumo did not know of Marshal Yu's terror, and really did not have the attention to spare. He was walking on a tightrope. If he wasn't careful, One stumble and he would fall to his death. In front of the anti-dragon claw and the sun crystal seed, Martial Yu wasn't worth a mention. He truly felt this. However, Zuo felt surprised that the sun crystal seed had activated the Ten Crow celestial domain, but he quickly understood. The sun crystal seed most likely had detected the threat of the anti-dragon claw, and wanted to use the power of the Ten Crow celestial domain to fight against the anti-dragon claw. The power level of the Sun Crystal Seed's Ten Crow celestial domain far surpassed his own. The Ten Crow celestial domain it activated was far more powerful than normal. Every transformation of the Ten Crow celestial domain was activated. Even the higher-level transformations were activated as the higher-level power filled it. Zuo watched the entire process and didn't dare to divide his attention at all. Even if he was in a dangerous situation right now, the scene in front of him attracted his attention. He could see every change in the Ten Crow celestial domain with his own eyes. He paid rapt attention to how the Sun Crystal Seed activated the Ten Crow celestial domain. If he paid close attention, then he would be able to know all the transformations of the Ten Crow celestial domain. The Sun Crystal Seed was even pointing out the path of progression for the Ten Crow celestial domain as well. Zuo greedily watched the changes of the Ten Crow celestial domain, under the control of the Sun Crystal Seed. At this time, the Sun Crystal Seed was the best teacher. No matter if it was the Sun Crystal Seed or the Anti-Dragon Claw, they seemed to have intelligence on level of a person. The Anti-Dragon Claw detected the Sun Crystal Seed's intentions. A vast murderousness immediately filled the space. The rain drizzle of the rain domain of no return suddenly froze under such a heavy murderousness. The rain domain of no return was as fragile as glass. Countless little gray wisps of killing essence swam between the frozen raindrops. Cold and vast, brutal and savage, like a vicious beast baring its fangs and glaring at its prey with its crimson red eyes. It easily tore apart the layers of defenses, and charged into people's minds with little to no resistance. The people affected felt endless terror, come as a wave sweeping their legs out from under them, and immediately swallowed them. Bam! A clear and pleasing shattering sound echoed. The rain domain of no return only lasted for a few breaths under the attack of the anti-dragon claw before it collapsed. Martial Yu's face paled. The rain domain of no return had been defeated, and he had been wounded by the backlash of power. His eyes were filled with terror. He looked at the wave of murderousness that seemed to be a great gray monster howling and fell into a daze. Anti-Dragon Claw. Was this the true power of the Sky Missouri weapon, the Anti-Dragon Claw? Suddenly, he felt he was so minuscule, as tiny and insignificant as dust. Ambition, pride, it was like a beautiful bubble that popped. His face was ashen and his eyes dim. However, he was at martial level. The murderousness had momentarily stunned him, but he had the power to fight back. The MO skill in his body detected danger, and started to circulate on its own. His body suddenly shook, his face paling even more. But his calm expression gradually fought its way back from terror. Though there was still shock on his face, his eyes had cleared up. So risky. The danger just now had been greater than any of his fights. Martial Yu looked with lingering fear at Xiao Mo, whose figure was shrouded in golden light in the sky. Inside that blinding ball of golden light was a gray pillar of energy that shot into the sky. That was the Anti-Dragon Claw. Anti-Dragon Claw, a Sky Missouri weapon. Only now did he truly understand the meaning of these 6 words. He finally understood only those martial level and above could tame the Anti-Dragon Claw. Martial Yu suddenly smiled in self-disdain. Previously he had thought of how to subduing the Anti-Dragon Claw. Now he finally understood how laughable his thoughts were. There were many sayings about the Anti-Dragon Claw, but everyone believed one. Only martial level and above could subdue them. But after personally seeing the Anti-Dragon Claw, Martial Yu immediately understood that this saying was not complete. It was not martial level or above that could tame them, but above martial level. Other than the power of a martial, one also had to have the appropriate MO skill. Something as brutal as the Anti-Dragon Claw would only be tamed by those bloodthirsty and battle-hungry. Otherwise, even if one had the power of a martial, they would be shattered by the killing essence of the Anti-Dragon Claw. Understanding this bewilderment flashed across Martial Yu's mind. Even he was unable to withstand the killing essence of the anti-dragon claw. Theoretically, Xiao Emogu should have ground to dust. But Xiao Emogu was unharmed in the air. Also, the power contained in the golden light was different but terrifying in the same way. What was that? Was that another Sky Missouri weapon? This thought flashed through Marshal Ye's head, but he immediately felt it was absurd. It was the greatest of fortunes to encounter one Sky Missouri weapon like the anti-dragon claw. How unlikely would it be for someone to possess two at once? Marshal Yu was the strongest person on the battlefield, and his perception was also the strongest of all the people. He quickly found that the target of the anti-dragon claw's attack is not him but seemed to be that ball of golden light and the 10-crow celestial domain. Marshal Yu felt curious and happy, and also a thread of lingering fear. If the target of the anti-dragon claw had been him, then now, this guess caused him to shudder. Boom boom boom. The conflict between the anti-dragon claw and the sun crystal seed became even more intense. The 10-crow celestial domain had reached its strongest state. The great power created by the revolution of the 10 suns had formed a golden pillar of fire in the sky and shot at Zuemo and the anti-dragon claw. The anti-dragon claw that had possession of 9/10 of Zuemo's body did not show weakness. The gray emo matrix appeared again on Zuemo's body. A faint gray light suddenly appeared around Zuemo and shielded him. The black shadow of a dragon flickered inside the gray shield of light. When the pillar of fire came into contact with the gray shield, it struck the surface and was deflected off. Sparks flew and rained down. From the 10 suns in the air seemed to be infuriated and the light intensified. Countless streams of dark fire appeared in the dark red sky. The sky was like a river, and the flames like water. The golden pillar of light became even brighter. The thick pillar of light started to shrink and condense until it almost solidified. The croaks of crows suddenly resounded in the sky, and out of each sun came a crow shrouded in flame. When the 10 golden crows flew out, they turned into 10 streams of light that entered the golden pillar. It was as though cold water was suddenly poured onto the golden pillar, and it froze. 10 golden crows appeared on the pillar in different lifelike positions. From far away, Marshal Ye's pupils suddenly contracted. Golden Crow Battering Ram. He had personally experienced the power of Xiao Emogu's move. This move was extremely powerful killing move that surpassed the power of the general level. But the golden pillar in front of him felt completely different than the one that Xiao Emogu had used. Pressure. Yes, it was pressure. This time was a suffocating pressure. The moment the pillar formed, the sky and earth seemed to moving. Time seemed to stop, the dust in the air froze, everything seemed to still. Marshal Yu knew that this was just a feeling. He knew that this was just a phenomenon that appeared because the power was great enough, but uncontrolled shock still rose from the deepest part of his mind. Clang! The gold crow battering ram heavily hit the gray shield. Marshal Ye's body shook from the impact. The sound seemed to explode inside his skull. His mind blanked for a brief moment. Those further away with weaker cultivation immediately sprayed out blood. They were seriously wounded. Under such a strong attack, the gray shield was unable to withstand it, and exploded. However, the gray shield did not dissipate immediately. It turned to dozens of gray figures that shot at the golden crow battering ram. Howls sounded in the air. Numerous wisps of gray mist suddenly came out of Zuemo's body. When they appeared, they turned into gray shadows that charged towards the golden crow battering ram. These gray shadows turned into little gray dragons. They howled and roared as they moved along the body of the golden crow battering ram. In a blink, many tiny cracks appeared on the surface of the golden crow battering ram. The little gray dragons continued to fly out of the gray energy and join in the attack. These little dragons were vicious as they howled and roared. Their bodies were thin and long, they had 4 limbs, and their heads were triangular shaped. There were 2 extremely short horns growing at their foreheads. What was most shocking was that half of their body was a gaping maw and 2 rows of white teeth that was like 2 rows of the sharpest knives and chilled people's hearts. Boom! The golden crow battering ram suddenly fell into pieces and released golden fragments of energy. Under the dark red sky, the scattered dots of golden energy were beautiful to look at, like fireflies. An extremely beautiful scene created within extreme danger. The gray dragons that lost their target roared. Their voices were not loud, but they contained a heart-rattling brutality and bloodthirst. Because of their great number, the sound was like a tide and caused listeners' scalps to prickle. Smelling blood, the gray dragons jumped up like towards the 10 suns in the air. The streams of fire that rampaged in the dark red sky seemed to detect danger, and headed for the gray dragons. The sky immediately became the most vicious battlefield. The flames and the gray dragons continued to collide and destroy each other. Neither side showed any signs of giving up. Gray dragons continued to fly out of the gray mist, and the 10 suns continued to send off streams of fire. To the people watching the scene in front of them seemed like the apocalypse. The anti-dragon claw seemed to be discontent with the fight that was at a deadlock. It suddenly shook and a vast and brutal energy flooded into Zuomo's body. This brutal wave of energy was stronger than any of the previous surges. If Zuomo's body had not been tempered by the anti-dragon claw, it would have been destroyed at this moment. But even after being modified by the anti-dragon claw's energies, and having formed the gray Mo matrix, the gray energy still caused stabbing pains in his body wherever it passed. When this brutal energy entered Zuomo's body, the gray Mo matrix on the surface of Zuomo's body suddenly brightened. The Mo matrix flashed a strange light, and gave people a feeling it seemed to have come alive. Zuomo endured the pain, and did not dare to miss any detail. He had a strong feeling. Killing move. The anti-dragon claw was about to use its killing move. Chapter 650. Rebirth. Zuomo's intuition was accurate. The gray Mo matrix on his body flashed with an unusual light that seemed to flow and slide on the surface of his body. A strong wind formed in Zuomo's surroundings. The fine gusts of wind were like blades that sheared everything around them. The ground, the stones, the pebbles in the vicinity were turned to dust by the gusts of wind. In an instant, a hole more than 50 zhang deep appeared in the ground under Zuomo's feet. Zuomo's body floated motionlessly in the air. Then, a single deep roar seemed to come from within the ground. The roars of the gray dragons previously had been a multitude of fine roars like a tide, and caused people's hairs to stand on end and their scalp to prickle. This roar seemed to be a call from the ancient times, with the weight of time as it sounded from deep within the ground. For the first time, Zuomo's mind was overcome. For some unknown reason, an indescribable emotion spread through his mind. He was not the only one. Even Marshal Ye's face shook, and he entered a brief daze. Just as everyone blanked, the Mo matrix on Zuomo's body quickly changed. A shadow silently floated out of the Mo matrix on Zuomo's body. When this blurry shadow appeared, a brutal and vicious presence immediately filled the battlefield. The people who were still unfocused reacted in the most instinctive way, trembling. Unconsciously trembling. Uncontrollably trembling. Under this peerlessly brutal energy, their bodies were left cold and they trembled. Roar! A wave of anger suddenly exploded and spread through the entire field. Everyone seemed to be hit hard. The suns in the sky lit up in response to the roar of the shadow. The 10 suns revolved in the sky at an extremely slow rate. A great and pure power formed from the revolving suns. Zuomo was the first one to recover. He did not forget that he was dealing with a dangerous situation. If he was the least bit careless, he wouldn't even get a chance to amend the situation. Every detail of what was happening in his body clearly flashed across his mind. He knew that every detail had a chance of determining his fate, life or death. He needed to find that minuscule chance from all this. There were many transformations that he had a hard time understanding. Both the Sun Crystal Seed and the Anti-Dragon Claw represented power of a higher level, each beyond his knowledge. But he was still memorized it and did not give up. The terrifying presence released by the blurry shadow caused his soul to tremble instinctively. Suddenly, he saw a colossal beast. Its rampaging presence and its enormous shadow enveloped his minuscule figure. The strong pressure he felt left him suffocating. This was. The shadow suddenly broke free of Zuomo's body and flew into the sky. Dragon. A true dragon. The blurry figure held the presence of a true dragon. In the moment it flew into the air, the presence of the king of all beasts rippled outwards like a pebble thrown into water. No one knew that at this time, in this Jia, All the animals were prostrated on the ground as they trembled. But in Zuomo's mind, what it gave off was not the energy of a dragon, but a cold and brutal killing essence. It was as though its sharp, thick dragon claws dripped with black blood, the purest of all killing essences. In this moment, even the 3,000 strands of worry decided to retreat. Other than the thickest few strands, the other strands of worry released the anti-dragon claw. The anti-dragon claw that a portion of its restraints had been undone and unhesitatingly displayed its power and brutality. This dragon shadow moved like a blur of gray lightning, and Zuomo was unable to see its path clearly. As the shadow blurred, a sun at its peak intensity fell from the sky. Streaking through the sky like a comet, it howled as it smashed towards the gray shadow. Roar! The gray shadow suddenly roared, the killing energy reaching a peak. Rushing upwards, it fearlessly welcomed the sun's incoming attack. Pure killing essence was like the sharpest blade essence in the world. Both sides were peerless in their speed. Two lights, one gold and one gray, drew across the horizon and collided. Dong! And deafening sound. The entire Jie shuddered. There was no explosion, no gust of air, just a terrifying sound of the collision. Everyone felt the golden light brighten, until it was blinding. Their vision went white. But the light quickly faded and their vision recovered. Then they found that flames were raining down. Every thread of flame was a seed that had been caught in the wind and floated in the air. But this was just the beginning. The 9 remaining suns in the sky suddenly fell one after another. Dong dong dong. With every sound, Zuomo's body reflexively shook. Blood seeped out from his hose, eyes, and mouth. No matter if it was the 10-crow celestial domain or the shadow of the dragon, they were connected to him. When the two were fighting like this without any regard the damage they suffered, Zuomo's body was collateral damage. If this was in the past, his body would have been unable to endure the backlash from the fight. Fortunately, his body had been strengthened, but even so, with every impact, his body suffered a heavy blow. The power inside his body was not under his control, but it still existed. Every impact was soul-rattling, and the entire Jia trembled in unison. 10 times in succession, the sun crystal seed and the anti-dragon claw clashed, and did not leave anything behind. The magnitude of the backlash that Zuomo's body endured reached a shocking intensity. The gray MO matrix on the surface his body was twisted and tangled in on itself like metal wire. The rain of fire gathered back into 10 suns again. However, they were several times smaller and dimmer than before. They were like 10 red beads that entered Zuomo's body again. The earth-shaking collisions surpassed Zuomo's knowledge. In front of such great power, Zuomo could not react at all. However, the battle had not ended. The two, now wounded, returned to the old battlefield back in Zuomo's body. The conflict was not as powerful as before, but in terms of danger, it was even greater. The sun crystal seed was much dimmer, but it still continued to release hot flows. Zuomo discovered that the hot flows released by the sun crystal seed was weaker than before. The anti-dragon claw's presence was also weaker. Once again, the battlefield was where the 10 sun matrices were located. The power of the two sides weakened as they continued to destroy each other. Zuomo found to his joy that the suppression of his power seemed to show signs of weakening. But the damage his body endured became greater. As the two powers continued to weaken each other, they did not have any power to spare to heal Zuomo's body. The green vine mystical water was still being suppressed. While there was signs of release, it was still unable to move. Zuomo started to feel urgency. He knew that as the two powers weakened, he would regain control of his body. But he was afraid that his body would be damaged beyond repair by that point. He could not wait until that moment. As the suppression weakened, Zuomo's mind recovered its usual nimbleness. He did not hesitate and made a decision. He had to do something. The only card he had left was the soul-setting divine light. At this time, no matter what, he had to try. His body was pushed to the point where it was going to completely collapse. His first target was one of the sun matrices, the sun matrix at his forehead. The sun matrix was much dimmer than before, but there was still much of the hot flows of energy from the sun crystal seed inside. The brutal energies of the anti-dragon claw outside were continuously attacking this sun matrix. The power of the two sides collided and shifted as they fought of dominance. the soul-setting divine light suddenly appeared. Without any warning, the two powers were suddenly frozen in place. No set in place. The sun matrix that had been restless just now was strangely calm. The following changes were out of Zhuomo's expectations. Zhuomo had observed that the two powers had been colliding and destroying each other. But now the situation seemed slightly different. When the power of the two apparent mortal enemies was set, Zhuomo discovered that there was a novel power that glittered like the stars that was left around the sun matrix. This power was not like any power that Zhuomo knew of. Compared to the brutality and dominance of the anti-dragon claw and the sun crystal seed, these strange fragments of power were unusually peaceful and gentle. As Zhuomo's thoughts moved to examine the fragments, they entered Zhuomo's blood and flesh. The next change brought joy to Zhuomo. These seemingly peaceful and harmless fragments had the strong ability to heal and regenerate. Once they entered Zhuomo's flesh, the flesh started to miraculously heal. Yet the healed flesh seemed different than before. There was no time for Zhuomo to study it carefully now. There were 9 other sun matrices where the battle was raged on. With his confidence boosted, Zhuomo urged the soul-setting divine light towards another sun matrix. The soul-setting divine light was as powerful as expected. Anything that it shined on, regardless of the intensity of the battle, would be immediately set. Zhuomo furiously searched for the fragments of power that appeared after the two powers collided. He had them enter his flesh and the effects were great. As 3 sun matrices were sealed by the soul-setting divine light, both the anti-dragon claw and the sun crystal seed seemed to have recognized that their control over the situation was quickly unraveling. The two powers immediately retreated. Boom! Zhuomo's body suddenly shook. He once again had control over his body. The joy at surviving this hardship rose. In this moment, he had an impulse to cry from joy. But he quickly calmed his mind. At this time, there were more important things to do. The strange new power that was floating around the sun matrices. Zhuomo greedily merged every drop of this newborn power into his body. He did not waste one bit of it. These dots and particles of power were not strong, and disappeared after being merged with his flesh. Zhuomo's body was healing at a visible rate. His nearly ruined body was restored in a short period of time. No, not as the same as before, but having changed again. Shin power, Ling power, Emo skill, spiritual consciousness, these familiar powers once again returned to his body. Strong confidence rose. Power was the basis of confidence. Without power, his confidence was unrooted. There was nothing more beautiful than this familiar confidence. At this time, Zhuomo suddenly noticed unusual movements in the 3,000 threads of worry. From the beginning, the 3,000 threads of worry seemed to have been neutral. It did not participate in the battle between the anti-dragon claw and the sun crystal seed, so its movements now were unusually eye-catching. This was Chapter 651. When he's sick, take his life. Several strands of the 3,000 strands of worry suddenly burrowed into the anti-dragon claw. The anti-dragon claw shook, but the furious struggle and resistance that Zhuomo had expected from the anti-dragon claw did not come. Was it? Zhuomo suddenly had a realization. The anti-dragon claw had exhausted itself in the conflict with the sun crystal seed just now and was in a weakened state. The following scene seemed to prove Zhuomo's guess. Pew pew pew. The slender 3,000 threads of worry punctured the anti-dragon claw like needles. The anti-dragon claw shook but did not resist. Great opportunity. 4 natural-born opportunists like little Emogu. If he missed an opportunity like this, then he would not be little Emogu. With his strength, he didn't know how long it would take him to subdue the anti-dragon claw. Previously, he had only managed to hold on to the anti-dragon claw by using the 3,000 threads of worry. But holding it and subduing it was not the same. Even though the anti-dragon claw could not escape, he could not channel the power of the anti-dragon claw. Right now, this was when the anti-dragon claw was weakest and the best opportunity to subdue it. Take his life when he was sick. This principle was also able to be applied to Sky Missouri weapons. In blink, Zhuomo threw aside his respect of the anti-dragon claw and started to scheme against it. Only now did he find that the 3,000 threads of worry was the most cunning and evil of the three. This guy had pretended to be neutral from the beginning, but showed its hand when the anti-dragon claw showed weakness. Very vicious. But I like it. Zuemo did not wait around watching but reached out as well. Regardless of how the 3,000 threads of worry subdued the anti-dragon claw, it could not help him tame this peerless MO weapon. He had to do it himself. Zuemo tried to reach towards the anti-dragon claw. In the moment that his hand touched the anti-dragon claw, an extremely brutal energy suddenly burrowed into Zuemo's body. Extreme fury. He felt the anger of the anti-dragon claw. Thunderous roars echoed in his mind intimidatingly. Zuemo was startled, but he quickly calmed down. Compared to the vast brutal energies before, this energy was sharp but weaker, leading Zuemo to be more certain that the anti-dragon claw was in a weakened state. He found to his joy that his newly tempered body did not feel any discomfort when enduring this brutal energy. This made Zuemo overjoyed. The anti-dragon claw also noticed this quickly. Another gust of brutal energy entered Zuemo's body. Zuemo's body suddenly froze. This energy seemed the same as the one before, but when it entered Zuemo's body, he immediately detected the difference. Dark and cold. Extremely dark and cold to the point it almost froze Zuemo. At this dangerous moment, Zuemo hurriedly activated the soul-setting divine light. The soul-setting divine light was as wondrous as usual. This extremely cold energy was immediately set. Zuemo finally released a breath. But this energy was extremely cold, and could not be absorbed like the previous brutal energies, by Zuemo's MO matrix. This cold energy was extremely pure. Zuemo knew his own abilities, and that it would not be easy if he wanted to process it with his own power. But if he did not process it, it may lead to great trouble. An idea sparked. He thought of the remaining sun matrices. There were still many hot flows from the sun crystal seed inside the sun matrices. Would the hot and cold pair together well? His thoughts moved and Zuemo threw the extremely cold energy into a sun matrix. When this energy was thrown into the sun matrix, it was like cold ice poured into boiling oil, and caused a great disturbance. In moments, the extremely cold energy disappeared and half of the hot flow in the sun script was gone. More of the new power fragments appeared. Zuemo was overjoyed. These unfamiliar power fragments were of great benefit to him. After digesting these power fragments, Zuemo continued to focus his attention on the anti-dragon claw. At this time, his hand was tightly gripping the anti-dragon claw. This was the first time he touched the anti-dragon claw. The dragon claw was covered in icy and hard dragon scales, but the dragon scales where he held the MO weapon were much finer than the scales elsewhere. More strands of the 3,000 strands of worry burrowed into the anti-dragon claw, and it trembled even more violently. At his time, the anti-dragon claw grew dim like it had lost all of its light. Zuemo gritted his teeth and reached into the anti-dragon claw along the 3,000 threads of worry. Boom. It was like Zuemo's finger had been placed into a glacier. Great cold energies immediately exploded forth and spread into Zuemo's body from his finger. Gray frost headed for Zuemo at lightning speed. Not good. Zuemo paled. He suddenly understood he had been tricked. The anti-dragon claw purposefully pretended to appear weak to lure him. Such a cunning MO weapon. Just as the frost was about to cover Zuemo immediately, Zuemo unhesitatingly threw out his ultimate card, Soul-Setting Divine Light. The Soul-Setting Divine Light seemed small, but it was unexpectedly powerful. Gritting his teeth, Zuemo released the cold flows towards the three remaining sun matrices. In moments, the cold energy that invaded his body had disappeared, but so had the hot flows. Zuemo felt some pity. He finally understood what these hot flows were. They were the base source of the sun crystal seed's power. If he could have processed them, it would have been greatly beneficial for his Shun power and the 10-Crow celestial domain. It was a pity that the cold flow had been too powerful, and he could not withstand it on his own. Fortunately, the two powers had destroyed each other and created those new power fragments. After this fright, Zuemo became even more cautious. The anti-dragon claw was valuable, but if he lost his life trying to tame it, then it would not be worth it. This cold energy seemed to be the last attack the anti-dragon claw had. The anti-dragon claw became almost lifeless in Zuomo's hand like a withered branch. It was extremely dim, and there was none of its awesome presence that it showed before. Zuomo did not encounter any more resistance. His hand reached into the anti-dragon claw and easily touched the icy bone at the core. This bone seemed to be carved from ice. Zuomo couldn't help but shudder when he touched it. It was too cold. But Zuomo's face showed joy. He knew he had found the crux. The 3,000 threads of worry seemed to understand that Zuomo had tamed the anti-dragon claw and shrank back out from the body of the anti-dragon claw. This was the first time Zuomo saw the 3,000 threads of worry release the anti-dragon claw completely. Suddenly, Zuomo's hand was empty. The thick anti-dragon claw had disappeared and was replaced by a gray claw bracelet on his wrist. This bracelet was dim in color and nondescript. In this moment, Zuomo seemed to be dreaming. He had succeeded? He had really succeeded? A surreal feeling overwhelmed him. Had he subdued the Sky Missouri weapon anti-dragon claw like this? Looking at the gray bracelet on his wrist, Zuomo's expression was slightly dazed. The entire process had been surprising, but the attempt was almost unimaginably easy. It had gone so smoothly that Zuomo felt that there had been a problem somewhere along the line. Zuomo quickly found that there really was a problem. No matter how he called out it, the gray bracelet did not respond at all. It did not react as though it was dead. Zuomo was stunned. Why was it like this? The great disparity made him almost throw up blood. Anti-dragon claw. Where did my Sky Missouri weapon, anti-dragon claw, go? The bracelet did not move at all and did not shine. No one would connect this dim article to the vicious and peerless anti-dragon claw. Depressed, Zuomo quickly sorted out his emotions. Right now, he had not completely escaped the present danger, and he could not waste his time on this matter. He looked around and his gaze immediately landed on Marshal Yu. Marshal Yu did not look as at ease as he previously had. His face was white, and he seemed to be wounded. Thinking about the earth-shaking conflict that had just occurred, Zuomo realized that Marshal Yu had probably been suffered a major injury. Zuomo's guess was very accurate. Marshal Yu had been greatly affected. It could be said that the blow he had received was much greater than others. One reason was because he had been closest to Zuomo when the battle had happened, so he naturally received more of the collateral damage. The other reason was because he was the strongest person present and had the deepest understanding of power. Higher-level powers affected him more than other people. However, his gaze flickered. He was wounded, but he was not demoralized. He was filled with confidence. He had been affected the most, but he had gained the most. If he could successfully recover, and could digest all that he comprehended today, his power would definitely go up a level. Zuomo also understood this, and his gaze became vicious. At this time, Marshal Yu had gone through a hard battle, and he was wounded. This was when he was weakest. Zuomo's own power had actually increased, and he was at his strongest. If he waited for Marshal Yu to heal completely, the other was not someone that he could defeat under normal circumstances. He could not reach martial level anytime soon. Zuomo did not know what level Marshal Yu would reach after digesting his comprehensions today. Zuomo was disappointed that he could not use the power of the anti-dragon claw, but it wasn't as though he didn't have other tricks in his sleeve. Other than Sung Lianer, who was unable to fight, Wali, Ague and the Black Gold Seal Soldier still had most of their power. With him added on, they might have a chance. This was the best chance to kill Marshal Yu. No matter what, he had to keep Marshal Yu from leaving. Otherwise, there would be trouble in the future. Zuomo suddenly showed his viciousness. He gritted his teeth. With a sudden flicker of his body, he dove at Marshal Yu. Kill Marshal Yu. Almost as his words sounded, Ague, Wali and the others moved. Bihan had been far away, and not been affected too greatly by the shockwaves. But he still felt nauseous. Fortunately, the nightmarish battle had finished and he recovered. The fight between the 10 Crow Celestial Domain and the Grey Dragon had been heart-stopping, but even then, Bihan's gaze had not left the others' ranks. He noticed that the ranks of the Yu Frontier Guards had been affected and become messy. Innumerable weaknesses appeared clearly in his eyes. When Zuomo shot at Marshal Yu, Bihan admired Zuomo's decisiveness. Almost at the same time, Sim battalions silently moved towards the U frontier guards. Chapter 652, Struggles. Wamo's charge was sudden, and Marshal Yu was caught off his guard. Even if his strength had been affected by his injuries, he was still not someone that Xiao Emoge could defeat. Didn't the exchange just now reveal that? Or did Xiao Emoge think that he could be taken down with the aid of the anti-dragon claw? A smile blossomed on Marshal Yu's face. A hint of disdain and derision flashed through his eyes. The anti-dragon claw was powerful, and the wounds he had received were not light. The power of any weapon was determined by the wielder. He was sure now that while the anti-dragon claw was in Xiao Emoge's possession, he had not subdued it. Since it was not subdued, the anti-dragon claw was ownerless. A sharp light flashed through his eyes. Seeing Zhuo Emo and the others leap at him, he was not afraid. With a smirk, he activated the rain domain of no return again. Under the peerless brutal energy of the anti-dragon claw, the rain domain of no return was fragile. However, without the suppression of the anti-dragon claw, the rain domain of no return was soft but fatal. The thin strands of rain were gentle and lingered in the air. Yet Marshal Yu, who had focused almost all of his attention on Xiao Emoge, did not notice that the purple light in Agui's eyes was much stronger than before. No one noticed the change. Agui had been severely wounded. Her Shen power had been suppressed by the rain domain of no return. Then she had been caught in the conflict between the anti-dragon claw and the 10 Crow celestial domain. Yet at this time, her expression seemed to suggest she was unaffected. Her snowy white bare feet did not have a speck of dust on them. She stood in the air like a ghost. The purple energy in her eyes was so thick it was almost tangible. If Zhuo Emo saw this, he would be astounded. The purple light in Agui's eyes had an additional eerie light, its presence thicker than it had ever been before. Agui's expression was indifferent. She glanced at Zhuo Emo. In that moment, the indifference on her face melted like the snow. She quickly turned away and her expression returned to indifference. Her bare feet silently stepped on the empty air, and her figure disappeared. Zhuo Emo did not know of Agui's transformation. At this time, he only focused on Marshal Yu. There was not a stray thought in his mind. 10 Crow celestial domain. When the sky became dark red again, many people reflexively raised their heads. The 10 Crow celestial domain that the Sun Crystal Seed had created had been so powerful it frightened them to their core. However, they quickly found that Zhuo Emo's 10 Crow celestial domain was not as powerful as it was previously. In the midst of it all, Marshal Yu became even more confident that the one that had been fighting the anti-dragon claw was most likely another great treasure, and not Xiao Emoge. Having thought this through, a disdainful smile rose on his lips. He did not need to be wary of this 10 Crow celestial domain. Instead, he was angered that Xiao Emoge dared to use a general level 10 Crow celestial domain against him. It really was an offense. The MO had strict ranks. In front of martial levels, generals were like ants. Marshal Yu had a great army and his strength as a marshal was enough for him to look down on others. Until now he had gone easy on Zhuo Emo, because of his fondness for talented individuals. But right now, his heart was filled with murderousness and he did not have any benevolence left. The 10 Crow celestial domain moved. A golden pillar came from the sky. Golden Crow battering ram. The disdain on Marshal Yu's lips deepened. This Xiao Emoge just didn't know what was good for him. He was as dumb as an ox. This move clearly was not of any threat to him. Yet Xiao Emoge dared to use this move. It was laughable. The green carp-tongue sword pointed into the sky. Rain suddenly gathered, spinning, and funneled to a point. The strands of rain swam and twisted around the golden crow battering ram. Idiot. Zhuo Emo had a similar smile of disdain that flashed across his lips before his expression became focused again. It was the golden crow battering ram, and appeared the same as it did before. When the swirling rain wrapped around the golden crow battering ram, a strange field of power surrounded the golden crow battering ram. Immediately, the golden crow battering ram seemed to have sunk into a bog and slowed down. There was no panic on Zhuo Emo's face, and his eyes lit up. He huffed lightly and then shouted, "Scatter!" Boom! The golden crow battering ram suddenly exploded. Countless needle-like golden lights suddenly spread into the surroundings. The rain that had surrounded the golden crow battering ram evaporated, and the needles of golden light entered the rain. Marshal Yu immediately grunted as his body wavered. He had not expected that Zuoyamo was laying a trap. His expression was both shocked and irritated. Zuoyamo had seen the entire process of how the Sun Crystal Seed set up the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain. He had memorized all of the transformations of the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain. This was something unimaginable to him in the past. No one could say that they understood the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain well. Even Pu Yao and Wei did not know too much about the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain. This had meant Zuoyamo needed to explore on his own. He had not expected that the Sun Crystal Seed would borrow his Ten-Crow Celestial Domain and reveal its secrets. The higher level power performed all the transformations of the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain and helped even his MO matrix mature to its completion. This was a benefit to Zuoyamo. A mature and perfected Ten-Crow Celestial Domain. After seeing all the transformations of the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain, he knew which direction to cultivate to go up a level. He still needed time to digest and practice what he had gained today, but undoubtedly, even without the anti-dragon claw, Zuomo's strength had completely transformed. He purposefully used the golden crow battering ram to trick Marshal Yu. When he saw Marshal Yu's figure sway, he knew he had succeeded. However, he did not feel any pride. This was a difficult battle that had just begun. Could a marshal be killed so easy? If this was a different place and time, Zuoyamo definitely would not choose such a suicidal course of action. But he knew that if he did not kill Marshal Yu, all that waited them was endless pursuit. Marshal Yu wasn't just powerful individually, he possessed many powerful battalions. After he recovered, it would just be a matter of time before everyone's died. Once Zuoyamo made his decision, he did not hesitate one bit. With the first attack having succeeded, he continued onwards. Bihan led Sim Battalion and charged into the enemy formation like a sharp knife. In his eyes, the weaknesses in the Yu Frontier Guards formation were clear. His charge was determined. All in Sim Battalion were MO with incomplete souls. They did not know fear, did not have emotions. They would systematically carry out all of Bihan's orders. They were the true killing machines. Bihan, who was usually reserved, was like a fiery blade, boisterous and powerful. The Yu Frontier Guards had not thought the enemy would dare to charge their formation. They were caught off guard and immediately suffered a great number of casualties. The Sim Battalion was like a bolt of lightning that split the Yu Frontier battle formation into two. If one looked down from the sky right, they could clearly see that the route the Sim Battalion advanced was not straight, but zigzagged. Bihan's path when he charged each time was precise. All the points he passed through were weaknesses he had detected. The Yu Frontier Guards finally woke up from their shock. Then they found their thick ranks had been divided in two by the enemy. Corpses were littered everywhere. Their battle formation was disheveled mess. The usually proud Yu Frontier Guards were left furious. When had someone dared to charge at the Yu Frontier Guards? When had someone else dismissed the battle prowess of the Yu Frontier Guards so? The foundation of the Yu Frontier Guards showed its depth now. Though Marshal Yu was not present, some general-level battle generals started to direct the battalions. The lucky Yu Frontier elite that had survived the earlier battle quickly returned to the ranks. The experts that had been guarding the chariot flew to the very front in the hopes that they would buy some time for the main army to rally. Yet they underestimated the skill level of battle general they were facing. A snarl suddenly appeared on Bihan's icy face. He felt that his blood was boiling, desire for battle filling his heart. He wanted to howl into the sky. Kill. A shout thundered across the sky. Sim Battalion attacked again. Zuoyamo was extremely cautious about Marshal Yu's rain domain of no return. He chose close-quarter combat. He was now familiar with the transformations of the Ten-Crow Celestial Domain, but 1. He had not mastered all of the transformations, and 2. The general-level Ten-Crow Celestial Domain was not a match for the Marshal-level rain domain of no return. He was not the Sun Crystal Seed and could not bring out such high-level power. Zuomo's attitude of fighting to the death infuriated Marshal Yu. Marshal Yu had been of high status for a long time. It had been many years since someone dared to offend him, and not given to his demands. He was not afraid of close-quarter combat. The green carp-tongue sword disappeared from his hand. Without seeming to take a stance, his hand flipped, and he made a grabbing motion towards Zhuamo hiss. Like the hiss of a snake, an enormous clawed shadow left his hand and flew towards Zhuamo. Zhuamo felt his vision darken. The enormous clawed shadow covered his field of vision. A terrifying gust of wind rushed at him like a snake. Fighting spirit roiled in Zhuamo's eyes. He did not dodge. His hands came together and his body straightened towards the clawed shadow. A golden light shaped like a spike covered Zhuamo's entire body. Decisively he charged at Martial Yes clawed shadow. Gold thread spike. One of the 10 transformations of the 10 Crow celestial apparatus. The two forces collided in a clash of brute force boom. Zhuamo vision filled with a blinding light and his body shook. The backlash of power was like being struck by lightning. He couldn't help but grunt. However, his hand was held steady and did not shift. His vision cleared up. He had charged through the clawed shadow. Zhuamo's confidence increased. The golden light brightened, and its presence became sharper. Yet at this time, the Black Gold Seal Soldier and Ague had both sneaked near Martial Yu. They had surrounded him. Martial Yu did not reveal any panic on his face. He was unaffected as though he did not care about the destruction of his clawed shadow. He stared at Zhuamo and suddenly smiled. Then Zhuamo felt a strange and extremely powerful suction force pull his body to the side. Zhuamo was startled. You really think that a domain of a martial only has such simple capabilities? 30 zhang around Martial Yu rain started to come down in a drizzle. Through the drizzling rain, Martial Yes' disdainful voice clearly passed into Zhuamo's ears. The rain domain of no return. Chapter 653. Aigui's attack rain domain of no return. The smaller rain domain of no return was just 30 zhang in diameter, did not span a large range like it had previously. Yet the area it enveloped a strange and powerful repulsive power. This strange power was not large in expanse, but it was frighteningly powerful. Zhuamo had never thought that even with such a fast attack, he was still forced off his mark. He was surprised that the domain could be used like this. It really was wondrous. The reason he had chosen close-quarter combat was so that he could avoid Martial Yes' rain domain of no return. He hadn't thought that he would end up colliding with the rain domain of no return anyway. Had never expected that Martial Yu could use the rain domain of no return in close quarters. Zhuamo was too fast. When he was pulled astray by the field of power, he was not able to react in time, and could only watch as he darted past Martial Yu. Martial Yu was prepared and his hand lightly reached towards Zhuamo. If his hand landed, Zhuamo would be seriously injured if not killed. Martial Yes' movements were mighty and forceful. Just a glancing blow would result in a serious injury. Facing at a life-and-death situation, Zhuamo's response was quick. Whoosh! The space around him suddenly became dark red. A wave of hot air spread into the surroundings. 10 Crow Celestial Domain. Zhuamo used what he had just learned and activated the 10 Crow Celestial Domain. Martial Yu laughed coldly. His hand did not shift from its path. The hand seemed to be weak, but Zhuamo felt his breathing stop in his throat. Little Mo's expression changed drastically. His 10 Crow Celestial Domain was channeled to its limits, but he didn't have any confidence he could stop this blow. At this time a figure suddenly charged out. Pia. A clear sound of a collision rang out, and the figure that rushed forward flew backwards. Martial Yes' blow was forced slightly astray by this figure. The air pressure of the blow brushed Zhuamo's body, and passed into the empty space behind him. It created a deep hole over 20 zhang in the ground. It was the Black Gold Seal Soldier that was thrown backwards. He bared his teeth and hissed. His expression indicated the pain he felt, and the seal scripts on his body became dimmer. Zhuamo was calm. He found that while his 10 Crow Celestial Domain was suppressed by Martial Yes' rain domain of no return, he could still cancel out the strange effects the repulsive field had on him. While Martial Yu overbearing in his movements and blows, he clearly was not skilled in close physical combat. This was an opportunity. Zhuamo's body twisted. Like a slippery fish, he followed the path the strange field of power flowed in, and suddenly appeared below Martial Yes' right. His right hand formed a fist that suddenly exploded with blinding golden light and furiously dancing golden flames. Fire Fist of the First Heavenly Stem. 10 transformations, ranking first in dominance, the first fire. 1. Martial Yu snorted coldly. His left arm raised, the 5 fingers of his hand extended towards Zhua. Bam 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 bam. Like heavy beats of a drum, 5 terrifying gusts of air hit Zhuomo's Fire Fist of the First Heavenly Stem. Zhuo was struck heavily. His body shook and the flames dancing on his right fist were forcibly extinguished. Even more terrifying was that when the 5 gusts of air hit his fist, 1/2 of his body was left numb and unable to move. At this time, countless black chains appeared out of the air and burrowed into the rain domain of no return. Wuli had attacked. These chains were like the sharpest of sword essences. In a blink, they pierced the rain domain of no return. The rain domain of no return had a strange field of power in the 30 zhang it covered, but it was too small of an area. It stopped the great majority of the chains, but 2 still managed to pierce through it. The 2 chains twisted in strange positions within the rain domain of no return. Martial Yu, who had been calm until now, changed expression. The twisting chains caused the invisible field of power to appear. Suddenly, a ghostly figure ran alongside the chain and entered the field of power to silently appear behind Martial Yu. Agui. Her eyes were filled with purple energy. Her hand pressed in the empty air 3 cun from Martial Yu's back. There was no sound. Martial Yu's body suddenly shook. His expression froze on his face, his eyes filled with disbelief. Why was it like this? Why was it like this? He stood woodenly. He wanted to turn around, but no matter how hard he tried, his body did not listen to him. The light in his eyes retreated like the tide, and in a blink, the light was gone. The Yu Frontier Guards had incurred heavy losses. Bihan Sim Battalion harvested life with an indifferent attitude. They did not have pity, feel sympathy, or know exhaustion. They continuously charged at the Yu Frontier Guards' ranks. Even though they had fewer members, they held the advantage. They were strong and vicious. They never feared engagements where they were outnumbered. They continuously shifted their positions. Each tactic was unexpected. From the initial charge, they held the advantage. The Yu Frontier Guards having a very difficult time and were exhausted. They lacked a powerful battle general to lead them. In Bihan's eyes, a battalion like this was full of holes to exploit. If it wasn't for the Yu Frontier Guards' flexibility, they would have crumbled a long time ago. But if this continued, the defeat of the Yu Frontier Guards would just be a matter of time. This battle general is too powerful. Ming Yue was shocked. She almost couldn't speak. She was not the only one. Ming Hui and the others were stunned. At this time, they finally understood just how powerful this battle general they had fought was. In the beginning, they had thought of taking advantage of the chaos and to attack Sim Battalion from behind. But after seeing the entire battle, their lips trembled and their limbs felt cold. They couldn't muster up those thoughts any longer. They saw with their own eyes how Sim Battalion dismembered the Yu Frontier Guards. The comparatively slow responses of the Yu Frontier Guards could not stop the predation by Sim Battalion at all. At times they were as sly as wolves, and at others as ferocious as tigers. The battle general of Sim Battalion was unbelievably powerful. His control of the entire battlefield reached a frightening level. But what shocked people even more was Bihan's unrelenting style of fighting. They would aim at the enemy's weakness with strong attacks. A minor weakness would quickly worsen. Then this weakness would become more significant until it affected the entire battle. And if the enemy managed to surround them, they would find an opening at the most opportune time and fight their way out before turning around and slaughtering the pursuers. In this short battle, the Yu Frontier Guards had suffered great losses. Their advantage was slowly growing, because the battle formation of the Yu Frontier Guards broke down under their repeated charges. If they managed to completely destroy the battle formation of the Yu Frontier Guards, then no matter how many people the Yu Frontier Guards had, they would become lambs waiting for slaughter. It really was powerful. Ming Hui and the others accepted their loss. They had lost for reason. The death of Martial Yu became the straw that broke the camel's back. Many of the Yu Frontier Guards that were fighting saw Martial Yu's body fall from the sky and were left dumbstruck. Some had even started to cry. Terror and hopelessness spread like the plague across the battlefield. The U Frontier Guard's morale had almost been broken by the charges of Sin Battalion had complete collapsed. Everywhere Sin Battalion passed, blood and flesh flew. Bihan was like a bloodthirsty blade as he directed Sin Battalion. The outcome of the battle was set, but Bihan did not relent. He continued to slaughter the U Frontier Guards. He was like a meat grinder on full power. A killing machine. There were no words that could describe what everyone felt right now. They saw the death of Marshal Yu with their own eyes. This was the marshal to died of unnatural causes in hundreds of years. There was a saying in the Mo territories, only marshals could kill marshals. However, they saw a marshal die at the hands of some unknown people. Among them, the most famous was Xiao Mo. While Xiao Mo seemed to have some fame in Great Peace City, but in the entire 100 Savage of the Dark, he was a nobody compared to Marshal Yu, someone who had been famed for decades. What was even harder to accept was that there wasn't a marshal among them. Everyone had believed that Marshal Yu would ultimately win in the end. Even when the anti-Dragon Claw had been dominating, no one thought that Marshal Yu would fall in battle. But Marshal Yu had died, felled by the hand of an unknown female. That female was the maid standing next to Xiao Mo. No one present even knew her name. The great Marshal Yu fell to a woman like this. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed it. Even now, they did not understand why Marshal Yu died. Zhuo Mo panted heavily. His fight with Marshal Yu had been short, but it was a dance with death. Zhuo Mo felt very surprised that a Gui had killed Marshal Yu. But when he saw the burning purple energy in a Gui's eyes, he suddenly understood why she succeeded, and his expression changed. He didn't feel any joy. With a flash, he appeared next to a Gui and grabbed her hand. What he didn't notice was a thread of warmth flashed through her purple eyes when he grabbed a Gui's hand. Zhuo Mo's heart sank. The purple energy in a Gui's body was now many times stronger than it had ever been. This was not good. The purple energy was a very eerie power. It could make a Gui very powerful, but at the same time, it would corrode a Gui's body, destroy her vitality and seal her 6 senses. Zhuo Mo understood that a Gui had definitely suffered extremely serious injuries in exchange for the victory just now. The purple energy was unique in that it would become stronger after injury. But even so, it could not be so strong. Zhuo Mo looked at a Gui. He knew that something had happened to her just now. Zhuo Mo didn't feel the joy of victory. The purple energy in a Gui's body was so strong. Her condition would quickly worsen, and her connection with the outside world would be completely blocked. Damn it. Zhuo Mo's expression was dark. A Gui silently stood next to him as he held her hand. Her eyes filled with purple energy were gentle. Looking around, Zhuo Mo knew he finally won. However, what he did not know that a similarly intense battle was occurring in another place. Chapter 654. Guliangdao looked at the Mo battalions who had almost been wiped out and praised. Brother Gongsun's battalion is peerlessly sharp. Guliangdao's figure was tall, his features rough and his voice boomed like a drum. His face was weathered, and he didn't look anything like the disciples of the 4 great sects who lived in comfort. His praise attracted agreement from the commanders around him. They all nodded. These battle generals from Xixian were all subordinates of Guliangdao. They had followed him for a long time, and usually had their eyes up in the sky. But right now, they did not disguise the admiration they felt. This battalion was qualified to be treated this way. Gongsun Cha smiled bashfully and said, "Brother Gu is too complimentary. If it was not for Brother Gus' help, we would still be traveling here." His tone was sincere. The battalions of Gongsun Cha and Guliangdao had met in Old Field Jia, and the two had immediately started to fight. Guliangdao had been shocked by the power of Vermilion Bird Camp, and he immediately ordered his battalion to retreat. Even though Vermilion Bird Camp had some Mo among their ranks, the great majority of them were sword xiao. Guliangdao had thought that this was a core battalion from Kunlun, and sent someone to inquire. When he learned that the other was not a Kunlun battalion, Guliangdao was even more shocked. If he did not see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe that any faction other than the 4 great sects would have such a strong battalion. Gu Liangdao appeared rough, but he was actually detail-oriented. He immediately began forming a relationship with the unknown faction. A strong battalion and a top-ranked battle general. They were worth the effort to establish amicable relations. The battalion that Gu Liangdao led had been undefeated in the Mo territories. He hadn't felt any pain at giving this old field jia up to Gong Sun Cha if he had to. When he learned that Gong Sun Cha was doing all this to meet up with a single person, Gu Liangdao was filled with curiosity. Such a powerful battalion, and such a powerful battalion general. Their origins would not be simple. Any person that could have them as an escort would not be simple. And when he heard about how Gong Sun Cha and the others were traveling through numerous jia and fought innumerable battles in search of his Shixiang, he was moved. After pondering for a few moments, he decided to help Gong Sun Cha. Gong Sun Cha hadn't thought that the other would be willing to help him. Seeing the other's sincerity, Gong Sun Cha agreed. With Gu Liangdao as company, their rate of advance accelerated. The two battalions traveled together, and as they continued to fight along the way, their admiration of each other increased. Nothing had to be said of Gu Liangdao's status. He was the most famous battle general of Shixian, and one of the top battle generals in the world. But he had not thought that Gong Sun Cha could rival himself. Gong Sun Cha's style was strange and hard to predict. After spending time with Gong Sun Cha, Gu Liangdao had gained a better understanding of this person, and respect had formed. Gu Liangdao was an open person and valued friendship highly. Gu Liangdao came from Shixian, but he was not one of the core disciples. He had obtained his present position purely through fighting. Gong Sun Cha had never expected that Shixian's tiger general, famed through the world, was not a core disciple. Whenever this was mentioned, Gu Liangdao's subordinates had expressions of rage. Gong Sun Cha felt this was hard to believe. Such a famed battle general, yet his sect did not value him. Were the higher-ups of Shixian blind? Later on he learned that Gu Liangdao's good friend had died due to the son of one of the higher-ups in the sect. Gu Liangdao had waited for a chance and heavily injured this disciple. If it wasn't that the matter eventually blew up, that higher-up would have already taken Gu Liangdao's life. But while he managed to live, he had offended the majority of the higher-ranking members of the sect. This meant he could not safely stay in the sect. So he was sent to Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. He had fought many battles of varying scale, all the while the core disciples of the sect had schemed against him. But he managed to survive and accumulate achievements. His victories meant that, in public, the sect had to reward him, but in the shadows they colluded against him. They did so by sending him on ever-increasingly dangerous missions. He had, against the odds, miraculously survived and grew even stronger. Because of his openness and the value he placed on friendship, a group had gradually formed around him. The people he attracted were not valued by the sect, but they were talented and skilled. Gong Sun Cha gaped when he heard this. He had never thought that Shixian's tiger general, who seemed to be so honored on the surface, was forced into such a bad situation. Gu Liangdao did not care about these matters and brushed them away with a smile. While his relationship with the sect's higher-ups was terrible, he was open and willing to help others. This allowed him to make many friends from many places. Gong Sun Cha wondered why Gu Liangdao did not leave Shixian. With his strength, he would have an easy time no matter where he was. However, Gong Sun Cha did not ask. Everyone had core beliefs they held onto and guarded. With two powerful battalions and two top-ranked battle generals, the road forward was smooth. But when they were just about to arrive at Great Peace City, they suddenly encountered a lot of Mo. These Mo came from different families, and they carried Mo weapons. The group seemed to be scheming something. Once battle started, Gu Liangdao was a completely different person. Before the Mo could react, he sent the order to charge. He was decisive and did not hesitate at all. Vermilion Bird Camp was not willing to fall behind and also entered the fray. The battle was one-sided. Gu Liangdao and Gong Sun Cha even had the time to idly chat. The battle quickly finished, but during the cleanup phase of the battle, when Gong Sun Cha heard the terms Great Peace City, Xiao Mo Go, Great Peace Treasure Pavilion from the captives, his expression immediately changed. Especially when he heard that Marshal Yesu Frontier Guard had arrived ahead of them. Gong Sun Cha's face almost turned completely white. Even Gu Liangdao's expression became more serious. A martial level. Gu Liangdao had interacted with the MO ever since Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. He knew what a martial level existence represented. But he still didn't hesitate to accompany Gong Sun Cha to Great Peace City. Feeling urgency, Gong Sun Cha headed for Great Peace City at full speed. But when they arrived at Great Peace City, they saw Bihan massacring the Yu frontier guards. With the little black dots appearing in the sky, the calm expressions of Great Peace City's populace immediately changed. Bihan, who had been excited by the slaughter, immediately became calm again. He forced down the murderousness he felt and stopped his slaughter. He carefully retreated back to Zhuomo's side. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the battalions flying over at high speed. His gaze suddenly focused. 2 battalions. His skill was high and he immediately recognized that the 2 battalions flying at them were 2 elite battalions. He felt his heart shudder. He had had a fun time in the fight just now, but he had also expended great energy. If a conflict occurred, then it would not end well. Gong Sun Cha and Gu Liangdao had seen Bihan's almost mad style of fighting. Both of them were surprised. But when Gong Sun Cha saw Bihan fly next to Zhuo and set up a perimeter, he immediately understood. As expected of Shi Xiang, Gong Sun Cha praised inwardly. When he saw Zhuo was safe and unharmed, he immediately released a breath. Then he became excited. He had finally found Shi Xiang after traveling so far. When Vermilion Bird Camp saw Zhuo, they couldn't help but cheer. At this time, everyone's tense nerves relaxed. So these were Xiao Mo guest people. But Princess Xia and the others had expressions of shock and surprise. They had already been shocked at Bihan's Sim Battalion. But now 2 battalions that could rival Sim Battalion had arrived. What was Xiao Mo guest's background? However, once they discovered that the majority of these 2 battalions were Xiuzha, the crow shifted again. Was Xiao Mo Go also a Xiuzha? The fighting between Mo and Xiuzha was an everyday occurrence. The Mo had a deep hatred of Xiuzha. If it wasn't for the strength of these 2 battalions, many people would have attacked already. When Zhu Ku and the others looked at Zhuo, their expressions were complex. Only Princess Xia's expression returned to normal after a momentary pause. The arrival of Vermilion Bird Camp led by Gong Sun Cha allowed Xu Long and the others to relax. The suppressed exhaustion crashed into them like a tide, and they could only yield to their bodies. With Gong Sun Cha introducing them, Zhuo and Gu Liangdao met each other and thanked each other for the help. Gu Liangdao examined Zhuo and was filled with shock. He hadn't thought that Zhuo could be so young. When he heard Vermilion Bird Camp's cheers just now, he knew that Zhuo was extremely well liked by these people. It was not easy to accomplish that. Also, observing what he had from this journey alongside Vermilion Bird Camp, he knew just how proud this battalion was. This person was impressive to have received such affection from Vermilion Bird Camp. Gu Liangdao's gaze then landed on Bihan. At this moment, Bihan was like sword that had been resheathed. There wasn't any edge to him, and it was the exact opposite of his bloodthirsty battle state just now. Detecting Gu Liangdao's gaze, Bihan didn't even flick an eyelid and stood silently at the side. The icy blue Mo matrix made him appear like an ice cube giving off cold air. Gu Liangdao suddenly spoke. Are you Bihan of Sin Battalion? Bihan stilled. He hadn't thought that the other would recognize him. He nodded. That's me. Gu Liangdao's eyes lit up. He smiled and said pointedly, the rumors say much about the most accomplished battle generals of Xiankong Temple. Jiangzhou is flexible, and Bihan is fearless. Seeing you today, the rumors are not false. Bihan frowned. I am not of Xiankong Temple. Gu Liangdao wasn't surprised at all and nodded. He said, I have also heard of the matter of Brother Bi. He couldn't help but glance at Zhuo. The news that Bihan had fled Xiankong Temple wasn't a secret among the higher-ups in the Xiuzha world, and the information had been spread far. Sin Battalion had always been one of the core battalions of Xiankong Temple. The defection and betrayal of a battle general and a core battalion from the 4 great sects had never happened before. What he also had never expected was that Bihan would pledge his allegiance to this unknown Xiao Mo Gu. One, who are you? Bihan hadn't expected the other to know so much about him, and was slightly surprised. When he had been in Xiankong Temple, he never went out. There were only a rare few that knew so much about him. Yet the other had managed to easily identify him. Shixian's Guliang Dao. Guliang Dao smiled. I have heard of you. Bihan nodded and understood. No wonder the other knew of him. He was a disciple of the four great sections. The competition between the four great sects had been ongoing for thousands of years. The factions had a thorough knowledge of their rivals. Your days aren't easy. Why don't you join us? Bihan said directly. Guliang Dao's smile froze on his face. Chapter 655. Relations. Guliang Dao had not expected Bihan to be so direct, but he also felt puzzled. Put generously, people like Bihan were proud. They usually looked down on everyone and thought highly of themselves as the center of the world. Guliang Dao had only known that Bihan had led Sim Battalion and left Xiankong Temple, but he still felt it incomprehensible that he had decided to follow this youth. He then looked at Gongsun Cha standing at the side and Vermilion Bird Camp. Zuemo already had 2 top battalions. While this kind of strength could not rival the 4 great sects, it was much greater than the normal intermediate and small sections. Puzzlement, shock, confusion, these emotions mixed in his mind. With the 2 of you here, there's no need for me. Guliang Dao said with disdain directed at himself. While this was just a courtesy response, it reflected Guliang Dao's attitude. He did not know how big Zuomo's factions was, but he had 2 top battle generals. If he joined them, he would only be gilding the lily, and it would be difficult for him to earn a position in the inner circle. His intelligence and cunning were greater than pure battle generals such as Gongsun Cha and Bihan to have been able to gather such a group of people in such difficult circumstances. While Bihan was not skilled in scheming, he was perceptive. When he heard Guliang Dao say this, he did not try to persuade any further, and said coolly, "But in the future, Shixian will not be tolerant of you." The words hit the sore spot in Guliang Dao's heart. While to outsiders he looked to have a great reputation in the Xiuzhi world, and he was the top battle general from Shixian, the higher-ups from Xianxian would not support him. Ultimately, he was someone who had been categorized as something to be abandoned. To them he was an eyesore. The greater his reputation was, the more terrified the Shixian higher-ups became of him. While the higher-ups spoke good words on the surface and appeared understanding, Guliang Dao knew that it was just to lull him into a false sense of security. Because of this, he was willing to fight in the Mo territories which carried great danger rather than return to the sect. It was most likely that if he returned to the sect, what awaited him was loss of his command. Guliang Dao was someone who was pragmatic. After a moment of silence, he smiled freely and his expression was not disguised at all. He said openly, "The matters of the future will wait until the future. No one can have smooth sailing all the time. It is enough to have gained something from this trip." Zuemo and Gongsun Cha couldn't help but admire this. Even the icy look in Bihan's eyes melted slightly. This little brother heard that a marshal came, is he? Guliang Dao had a questioning look in his eyes. We accidentally killed him. Zuemo tried to keep his face normal, and said with slight embarrassment, "Actually, it had been a Gui that had killed him." Guliang Dao was struck dumb by Zuomo's expression, and even more so by the words. He stammered out, "Accidentally killed." He was not the only one affected. The commanders around him gaped as though they were seeing ghosts. "NNN." Zuemo nodded repeatedly. Guliang Dao's expression froze for a moment before he said, "Brother Xiao, as expected. As expected. The youth become heroes." He said as expected twice. He didn't know what words to use to describe his mood right now. He couldn't see any indications that the other was joking. He also knew that Xiao Emogu would not lie to him about this matter. The event would have just occurred, and there were also many people present. He would only need to briefly investigate to find the truth of the matter. And when he connected this to the scene of Bihan had been slaughtering Mo, this answer seemed reasonable. If it wasn't that the marshal had been killed, would the marshal would have tolerated his battalion being culled like sheep? All the evidence seemed to indicate that Xiao Mo guess words were not false. But that was a marshal, not a dog, a marshal. He was equivalent to a Fanqiu Xiuzhi. Even in Shixian, one of the 4 great sects of the Xiuzhi world, Fanqiu Xiuzhi were rare. They either spent their years in seclusion, or they were out traveling the world. But any Fanshu Xiuzha was a strategic power for a sect. Gu Liangdao had fought against the Mo, and he had a deeper understanding of the Mo than normal Xiuzha. In the Mo world, the martial level was the top power. They were the most strongest battle generals and strongest experts. Each of them was a person that could affect the state of the 100 Savage realm. The fall of any martial would be news that would cause all of the Mo world to shake. This was even more of a bomb than any Jie getting taken over. Zhuo Mo suddenly became even more mysterious and unfathomable in his eyes. Gu Liangdao kept his calm, but the commanders around him couldn't help but become cautious. Up until now, while the 4 major sects had obtained some gains, the Yama had not been seriously harmed. For the Mo, the fall of Martial Yu would be greatest loss up until now. Gu Liangdao quickly recovered from his shock. He was filled with curiosity and puzzlement, but he forced these feelings down. It would be impolite to pry so deeply. He changed the topic. Where is everyone planning to go now? To Nether Springs Jia. Zhuo Mo did not conceal this. The other had come to help. No matter what the reason for that was, it was a debt. Also, he could see that Gu Liangdao was an open-minded and generous person. Nether Springs Jia? Gu Liangdao was slightly shocked, but he did not ask why Zhuo Mo and the others were going to Nether Springs Jia. He said after some thought. Nether Springs Jia is in an extremely deep region of the Nether realm. It is far away, and there are many powers along the way. It will not be an easy journey. Zhuo Mo nodded, feeling the same. Yes. Gu Liangdao took something out of his ring and handed it to Zhuo Mo. He said with a hint of self-mockery, while I am just pretending to follow orders, this little brother has to still conquer a few Jia in order to satisfy my sect. I cannot go with Brother Xiao. This Jia map is something that this little brother gained as a spoil from a fight. It does not belong to my sect. The information about the 100 Savage Nether realms, and all of its Jia are marked on this map. I hope this will be of some help to Brother Xiao. Zhuo Mo's expression changed. The other's expression was sincere. It was a small item, but its value was several thousand jingshi, and was even more valuable to Zhuo Mo. This person was cunning but open and generous in how he treated people. He really is a hero. Zhuo Mo's expression became stern, and he put away the mirth in his expression. He bowed towards Gu Liangdao. Many thanks, Big Brother Gu. This little brother's true name is Zhuo Mo, and I have used the pseudonym Xiao Mo Gu while moving around in the Mo territories. Big Brother Gu, call me Xiao Mo. Gu Liangdao laughed and said, names are small matters and not worth a mention. Brother, be careful. The Mo never lack for vicious people, and have a deep-seated hatred for us Xiuzha. Brother Zhuo has to be careful on this journey. You also killed a marshal, and your identity as a Xiuzha will now most likely revealed. Now that you have become well known, the trip will no longer be a peaceful one. Big Brother Gu is right. Zhuo Mo's expression also became grave. After the fight today, his identity as a Xiuzha would most likely be unable to be concealed. The interested could be detected from the gazes of the survivors of Great Peace City. Their gazes were complex, filled with hate and gratefulness, but the most common emotion was fear. He suddenly said, this little brother has a matter, please Big Brother Gu help. What is it? Gu Liangdao asked directly. These Mo have some relations to this little brother. Big Brother Gu, please allow them to live. Zhuo Mo said. Gu Liangdao nodded without thinking. All right. Many thanks, Big Brother Gu. Zhuo Mo said gratefully. Gu Liangdao shook his head and said, do not think of this brother as a bloodthirsty person. Fighting wars is a matter for battalions. What does it have to do with civilians? This brother has not fallen to such a low level. Also, after this sky-splitting calamity, the intermingling of Xiuzha, Yao, and Mo will not be able to be stopped. The heavens will it. There is no need for unnecessary killing. A hint of shock flashed through Zhuo Mo's eyes. This Big Brother Gu of his was a very strong person as he had expected. It wasn't that Zhuo Mo hadn't met people who recognized this, but it was not easy for the Great Four to admit this. Then they started chatting about other matters. Gu Liangdao quickly found that while Zhuo Mo was young, his vision of larger events was clear. Even though he had accomplished so much at such a young age, he did not let his ego interfere. Gu Liangdao's judgment of the state of affairs was keen and experienced, something that a beginner like Zuomo could not match. Just a few sentences would be enough to enlighten Zuomo. Zuomo finally understood why Big Brother Gu hadn't died under the pressure of the sect, and had grown even more powerful. The two were very compatible and talked through the night. When the first thread of sunlight rose from the horizon, they seemed to wake up from a dream. Everyone knew that this was the time of separation. Zuomo and the others had to go to Nether Springs Jia, and Gu Liangdao and his group had to return back to reinforce their battle lines. They received news that there were enemies harassing their front line. But the two sides were not picky people. They exchanged methods of contact and bid farewell. When he saw the figures of Gu Liangdao and the others disappear, Zuomo finally turned his gaze away. The departure of Gu Liangdao's group caused the Emo survivors of Great Peace City to sigh in relief. When they heard that one of the newcomer battalions had been led by Gu Liangdao, they had been frightened half to death. In the eyes of many, Gu Liangdao was a god of slaughter. They hadn't expected Gu Liangdao to leave without even looking at them. Many people speculated that it had been Xiao Mo Gu who had spoken on their behalf. Their emotions were more complex. Xiao Mo Gu was a Xiuzha and was their enemy. But if it wasn't for Xiao Mo Gu, the great majority of the people in Great Peace City would have died. Regardless of whether they admitted it aloud, they all knew this inside. Xiao Mo Gu had saved their lives. But why was a person like this a Xiuzha? Many people had this conflicted thought. Zuomo did not care. He did not have any bias for or against the Mo. He understood the hatred between the Mo and the Xiuzha. He could also guess what they were feeling, but he did not care. It did not matter to him whether they felt grateful or hated him. He had done these things not for them, but to stay true to himself. He did not pay attention to them, and ordered his subordinates to clean up the battlefield. With Zuomo's personality, he naturally would not watch and allow so many of the spoils to slip by him. That wasn't little Mo Guest's style. Due to Xiao Mo Guest's presence, no one had dared to scavenge the spoils in the night. At this time, Princess Xia left the crowd. Chapter 656. Gu Liangdao's choice. Zuomo was slightly surprised as he looked at that alluringly beautiful face. Are you not afraid of me? Zuomo was puzzled. The other people looked at him with wariness and fear in their eyes. Yet Princess Xia approached him as usual. Princess Xia smiled alluringly. Why should I be afraid of you? Will you eat me? Zuomo was left speechless. Princess Xia's eyes moved and seemed mischievous. I hadn't thought that you would know Gu Liangdao, but it is fortunate for us that you know him. Otherwise, this place would even have ruins left. However, you have to be careful. It is not good for your reputation as a Mo to be associated with Xiuzha. Which family are you really from? 10 Crow Celestial Apparatus is a very noble bloodline. Are you a descendant of the ancient families? Her words were not spoken quietly, and she blinked playfully at Zuomo listening to Princess Xia's words. Many people showed expressions of relief. Princess Xia was right. How could someone that cultivated the 10 Crow Celestial Apparatus Mo physique be a Xiuzha? They had never heard of a Xiuzha that was able to cultivate the 10 Crow Celestial Apparatus Mo physique, much less reach the completion stage of the 10 Crow Celestial domain. Thinking about it this way, everyone found the thought that Xiao Mo Gu was a Xiuzha was absurd. All of the Mo present exhaled in relief. Everything would be alright if Xiao Mo Gu was a Mo. As to his relations with Xiuzha, while it was something that was frowned upon, no one cared too much. Look at those Xiuzha. Among them was the famed Gu Liangdao. They didn't feel that anything was wrong. Xiao Mo Gu was extraordinary as expected. Being familiar with other extraordinary people was expected. The common saying was birds of a feather flock together. Someone that the Tiger General of Xixian treated so respectfully. How could Xiao Mo Gu be a normal person? Unconsciously, the terror in their eyes weakened and transformed into respect. No matter where you were, people would respect the strong. Zuomo's expression froze on his body. He now understood what it meant to make black into white. Princess Xia's silver tongue could make dead people become alive. Her speech was meant to help remove the suspicion people had of him. even though it could not make everyone believe it. People such as Zhu Ku and a few others still had suspicion in their eyes. It was enough to fool the normal people. To them the 10-crow celestial apparatus was absolute proof. As to the Xiuzha under Xiao Emoge's command, those were even easier to explain away. Xiao Emoge and Guliang Dao had a good relationship. It would therefore be normal to have some Xiuzha under his command. Looking at this battalion, the Mo were the primary core. Looking at Princess Xia smiling as she spoke, Zuo knew that this woman had guessed his identity. However, he was still surprised that she had stepped out to help him. Zuo smiled but did not speak. In the eyes of everyone else, his silence and expression caused them to feel even more mystery from him. Xiao Emoge's origins were probably extraordinary, as Princess Xia had said. Zuo set up Jinji and blocked off all sound. "Thanks," he said seriously. Princess Xia smiled beautifully. "How will you thank me?" Zuo scratched his head. "Speak." Princess Xia looked deeply at Zuo as though she wanted to say something, but when the words reached her mouth, it became, "Where are you preparing to go next?" "Nether Springs Jia." Zuo did not conceal it. "Nether Springs Jia?" Princess Xia had a shocked expression. "That place will not be easy to get to." "Yes." Zuo nodded. Looking at the determination on Zuo's face, Princess Xia did not try to persuade him from his journey. She smiled and said, "Remember to visit me if you have the time. Don't forget that you still owe me a favor." "Yes." Zuo responded with a serious expression. Detecting the seriousness in Zuo's tone, Princess Xia felt strangely happy. She suddenly asked, "Will you tell me your true name now?" As expected, she had seen through him. But for some reason, Zuo felt his mind relax. "Zuo, Zuo, Zuo." Princess Xia murmured, and then she suddenly burst into laughter. "Xiao Emoge, you're really a little hoodlum. Even your fake name is so stylish." Looking at Princess Xia arching back as she laughed, Zuo's mouth curled up. The laughter faded. Calm and a distance separated them. The two of them knew that after their farewells, it was unknown if or when they would meet again. Looking at this face that could not be said to be handsome, in this moment, Princess Xia suddenly had an impulse to throw away everything and run away with him to Nether Springs Jia. This impulse caused her determination to waver, but she quickly hid the thought deep inside. She thought of the wish she had made that night, and her gaze became determined. She raised her face and smiled brightly like sunlight. "Hug me goodbye." Zuo stilled. He opened his arms and lightly embraced this woman that was so smart, and he could not understand. "Have a peaceful journey." The murmur was like a breeze. She released her arms and her smile was bright. As one of the most popular topics in the Xiuzha world at present, Guliang Dao's every move attracted attention. In a short few days, the news of Guliang Dao's interaction with a Mo called Xiao Emoge had spread. The information on this Xiao Emoge was quickly discovered. This Xiao Emoge was not an unknown Mo. However, what puzzled people was that this Xiao Emoge had first become famous in the Yao territories. The prison-breaking battle and defeating Corps Commander Yu Heng. All those events had happened in the 10-finger prison. Yet the Xiao Emoge in these rumors was Mo. And this puzzled many people. Was this guy a Yao or a Mo? Some even suspected that there were two people with the same name. But as Xiao Emoge's almost unbelievable escapades came to light, this suspicion weakened. It was very unlikely that two experts who were both called Xiao Emoge had appeared at the same time. And when the Xiuzha thought of the possibility there were two such talented Yaoma, they were more willing to believe that it was one person. Of all the incidents, what was most eye-catching was Xiao Emoge had killed Marshal Yu. When many people read this, their first response was that their eyes had seen it wrong. Then all kinds of information corroborated the accuracy of this news, and it caused a great furor. But what was most controversial was that Guliang Dao had helped Xiao Emoge. The rumor that the Tiger General of Xixian was in cahoots with the Mo spread, and once it did, it caused a wave of discussion. All kinds of insider information and speculation flew about. What was even more interesting was that Xixian was silent and did not publicly clarify the situation. Xixian's attitude caused those speculations to seem to be the truth. Was Gu Liangdao truly in cahoots with the MO? Furious discussion filled the world. In a matter of days, the great hero fell off the pedestal and was spat upon by the world. Gu Liangdao's face was dark. The development of the situation had surpassed his expectations. In the shadows, there seemed to be a hand moving everything. Actually, he didn't need to guess to know who was doing this. The attitude of the sect told him everything. What he hadn't expected was that the sect would be in such a hurry to act against him during a time of war. Suddenly he thought of what Bihan had said. He hadn't thought that it would come so quickly. Darren, should we make a public statement to clarify? The subordinate couldn't help but speak. Clarify? How would we clarify? Gu Liangdao said coolly. Xiao Mo Gu is clearly a Xiuzha. Gu Liangdao interrupted his subordinate. This will make Brothers Wa's situation even more dangerous. He currently needs his identity as a MO. He had felt kinship with Swo MO and he was not willing to use this to clear his name. Also, he did not say it. But even if he told them, no one would believe him. Because the people acting against him were the people from the sect. This subordinate was panicked. Darren, we cannot sit around and wait for them to act against us. At this time, a guard suddenly ran in with a terrible expression. Darren, Elder Jean Wuming has come. The tent went completely silent. All of the commanders had terrible expressions. Ask Elder Jean to come in. Gu Liangdao's expression was normal. Moments later, a middle-aged person wearing golden clothing with a sharp presence walked in. Gu Liangdao stood up and bowed. Greetings to Elder Jean. Elder Jean's old voice was heavy but his tone was slow. Gu Liangdao, the sect leader orders you to return to the mountain. Your actions this time were too rash and has brought too much trouble to the sect. When you return to the sect, you will need to give a good explanation. The sect believes that you are innocent, but the damage to the sect's reputation was too great. The sect needs you to cooperate. Gu Liangdao was silent while his commanders all had angry expressions. Elder Jean's wizened tone became even slower. Liangdao, there won't be any trouble if you just explain. If it wasn't that the discussion was too fierce, I wouldn't have come to get you. You need to understand the hardships of the sect. Cooperate with the sect and eliminate doubts we have. Gu Liangdao shook his head. Elder, your pardon. The war is a busy time and this disciple does not have the spare time to return to the sect at the moment. Elder, please return to the sect and tell the sect leader that when this war is finished, this disciple will return to the sect and ask for forgiveness. Elder Jean's gaze suddenly became as sharp as a sword as he shouted angrily. Gu Liangdao, you dare to disobey the sect leader? The reality is so there is nothing I can do, Gu Liangdao said deeply. Good. Elder Jean said 3 goods and then said coldly, there is nothing I can do. If Gu Shidi knew his most beloved disciple was so disobedient, I only wonder what he thinks in the afterworld. A deep grief flashed across Gu Liangdao's eyes. He slowly stood up and looked directly at Elder Jing. If it was not to repay Master's grace of raising me, would I stay at Xixien? I have fought countless times for the sect, almost died multiple times, and have rendered great service to the sect. I don't know the sect. If Master knew what the Xixien he had always defended has become like this now. Gu Liangdao allowed the tears to fall down his face. Elder Jing's face turned into a mix of colors as he shouted angrily. Good. You have become proud due to your achievements. You dare to not listen to the orders of the sect leader. This is treason. He looked around and said coldly to the commanders, are you all going to follow Gu Liangdao and betray Xixien? What's the use in such a ruthless sect? Well, betray you. I've long given up on this corrupt sect. This is very good, and it all. The commanders stood up one after the next and looked with fury and disdain at Elder Jean. Elder Jean's old face became ashen, and his extremities felt cold. Over the next few days, Xixien's Tiger General Gu Liangdao led his battalion in leaving Xixien. The world was left astounded. Chapter 657. Tang Battalion. It had been a month since the incident by the time Zhuo Mo learned that Gu Liangdao had left Xixien. Zhuo Mo was filled with guilt. From beginning to end, Gu Liangdao had not stepped forward to defend himself. There was much speculation about Zuomo's identity, but most of it focused on his identity as a Yaomo. He believed this was the reason for Gu Liangdao's silence. The two had exchanged imprints. Zuomo thought for a moment, and then wrote a letter to Gu Liangdao thanking him for keeping the secret, and asking what he could do to help. A paper crane quickly flew back into Zuomo's hand. Gu Liangdao's letter was very short. He had just finished a battle when he wrote this letter. In the letter, Gu Liangdao wrote that he had already sealed the Chaos Rift connecting to Shixian territory, and they would no longer receive any supplies in the future. He had taken over 15 Mo and was planning to manage them so he could be self-sufficient. Right now, everything was good and there was no immediate worries. Zuomo was relieved after reading this. 15 jia, even if it was only 15 small jia, was enough to support Gu Liangdao's battalion. However, these 15 jia they occupied were Mo territories, and the Mo had a deep hatred of Xiuzha. It would not be simple for Gu Liangdao to govern these 15 jia. However, Gu Liangdao shouldn't have any problems in the short term. Zuomo decided that after he went to Nether Springs Jia and returned to Cloud Sea Jia, he would set up a transportation formation to Gu Liangdao's territories. They could then travel freely and help each other. Zuomo threw away his worries about Gu Liangdao and started to ponder his present situation. In this past month, they had been traveling at full speed. It had to be said that the name of Xiao Mo Gu was famous in all of the Mo territories. Defeating the Yu frontier guards, killing Marshal Yu, having a good friendship with Gu Liangdao, and so on. This made the name of Xiao Mo Gu an intimidating one. Zuomo had previously thought he should travel in a low-key manner, but there had been too many battles along the way. Seeing this, Zuomo decided to announce his presence, relying on the fame of the name Xiao Mo Gu to avoid trouble. As expected, this move was immediately effective. Those factions that previously did not know their background immediately shuddered when they learned that the incomers were Xiao Mo Gu's battalion. They even consciously restrained their own battalions. There had been a Mo general who hadn't believed that Xiao Mo Gu was as strong as the rumors and wanted to test their skill. In the end, all of his commanders had opposed him, and he had been assassinated in his bedroom that night. Having raised his banner, Zuomo's path could be said to be free of any blockades. However, Zuomo was not happy. While their speed had accelerated, they had exposed their movements to the public. Where had Xiao Mo Gu reached today? This was one of the hottest topics of the present Mo world. Other problems came with this. At the beginning, they had been deeply afraid of Zuomo and the others. However, they quickly found that Xiao Mo Gu was not as brutal and vicious as the rumors said. As long as they did not provoke him, he would not attack. He did not have any interest in their territories. Many people wanted to establish relations with such a strong and reasonable battalion. Even if they could not form a relationship, it would be good to curry favor. Consequently, many messengers came every day with gifts and invitations for Zuomo's group to be guests. Zuomo didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He still accepted the gifts, but he refused all invitations. Yet what he hadn't expected was that there were large numbers of Mo that came due to his reputation with hopes of entering his battalion. At the beginning, there hadn't been many people, but when the first group of Mo who had come had seen the powerful soldiers of Vermilion Bird Camp and Sim Battalion, they had been stunned, and their desire had grown even hotter. When these people spread the mirages, it caused a great wave. All the large families started to study these inaccurate mirages. The conclusion they reached was the same: a powerful battalion. Defeating the Ming bandits and defeating the Yu frontier guards. These two battalions had now been ranked high among the many battalions in the 100 Savage of the Dark. Looking at these mirages, the last bit of doubt disappeared. They suddenly realized. No wonder they could defeat the Ming bandits and the Yu frontier guards. Mo always ranked themselves based on power. The strong were revered, and many Mo that thought themselves more than ordinary furiously rushed over. Xiao Mo Gu being able to kill Marshal Yu meant that Xiao Mo Gu possessed an ability to fight at a high level. Adding on the two top battalions, he had formed his own group. For those Mo which came from minor families but were talented, entering Xiao Mo Gu's battalion was undoubtedly a very good path. As more and more Mo came due to his name, and a long tail of people formed behind Zhuomo's group. They did not dare to go too close to the battalions, but they were not willing to leave. They prepared their own food and followed the battalion. This was something novel to the MO and it stirred everyone's interest. All kinds of reports spread. Every time Xiao Moge did something, the world would immediately know. This was a very popular topic at meals, and during tea with lots to discuss. All of 100 Savage Realm was watching the spectacle, and Zhuo felt frustrated. This cannot continue. Zhuomo's expression was one of helplessness. The people around him were giggling. These people were all from grassroots and minor families. While they did not say it, they still felt very good about being famous. They made faces at each other, and smiled deviously. Other than Bihan. Bihan was of noble birth and had grown up in Xiankong Temple. He had become immune to the reverent gazes from others a long time ago. His icy face was eye-catching. However, everyone knew his personality and did not care about his icy face. "I'm being serious," Zhuo said with a serious expression. "We don't know how many spies are mixed with these people. Each of our movements is being monitored. This is very dangerous." Everyone put away the mirth on their faces. They had all fought their way out of death on the battlefield and understood the danger more than the average person. And very dangerous. Gong Sun Cha smiled bashfully. Seeing Lil Miss Darren's smiling face, everyone's heart shook. Everyone think of a solution. What would be good? Zhuo had an expression of hardship. "Kill them all," Bihan said coolly. The entire tent was silent. Everyone was frightened by Bihan's crisp and brisk words. There were a few among them for whom it was the first time that they were attending a meeting. Ajia Ge, Bihan, Miao Jun, and Tang Fei. Among them, Ajia Ge was the most cautious. He had decided to follow Gong Sun Chao a while ago, but it was the first time he was seeing Zhuo. Miao Jun and Tang Fei also chose to remain silent. Only Bihan had not done that. Ajia Ge jumped in fright. Mo were fond of killing, but he had never seen someone with such disregard for life. Miao Jun's pupils shrank. Tang Fei's expression became furious. She was a righteous person and disliked Bihan, who behaved like a serial killer. Before Tang Fei spoke in opposition, Zhuo shook his head. "It is not suitable." Zhuo was not a madman like Bihan. While he was not soft when fighting an enemy, but he would not be able to do something like killing all these Mo that came due to his reputation without a cause. Gong Sun Cha said, "Since they have come for you, then why don't we recruit the outstanding ones? We just have to be careful and not let in spies." Zhuo thought, yes, they were coming to him. Why shouldn't he take them? He did not need to worry about the spies mixed within. Pu Yao and Wei could see with a glance those with other intentions. His gaze swept across everyone's faces. When his gaze landed on Miao Jun, he paused. There was no question regarding Miao Jun's strength. A gold battle general was a talent no matter what faction he was in. It would be waste if Zhuo had him sitting idle all the time. But while Miao Jun had come along, his intentions were unclear. Miao Jun had never disguised this, but he did not speak to reveal the reason he followed Zhuo. Because of this, Zhuo had some hesitations about him. When his gaze swept across Tang Fei, who stood beside Miao Jun, his eyes lit up. This little girl had a strong sense of justice, was stubborn and focused. She would not accept any flaws. Since she had agreed to Tao Xing's suggestion to follow him, she would not ever regret it. Even though she never had a good face for Zhuo, she would meticulously finish any orders Zhuo gave her. Zhuo trusted her. Before this, she had the skill of a silver battle general. After this period of being taught by Miao Jun, she had started to have some of a presence of a great battle general. Zhuo suddenly thought of a clever idea. That's right. If that's so, then let's create a new battalion. Oh, let's call it the Tongzi Battalion. Tang Fei will be the main commander, with Miao Jun as second in command. Everyone had surprised expressions, and they turned to look at Tang Fei. This young girl with her hair in a ponytail was not eye-catching, but at this time, she became the focus of the entire group. While not many had seen her skill and were curious about her, no one spoke up against Zhuo's decision. Tang Fei also was surprised, but she quickly calmed down. She looked at Zhuo and then at Miao Jun technically. Miao Jun was more suitable to being the main commander than she was, as Miao Jun was much more skilled. Miao Jun smiled at her. He understood what Zhou Mo thought, but this plan suited his own thoughts. While the two sides had not explicitly said this, but in truth, Tang Fei was his student and he liked his student very much. If this was somewhere else, Tang Fei's strength would be enough to be a main commander, but he hadn't thought that Zhou Mo would have so many skilled battle generals. Nothing had to be said about Gong Suncha and Bihan. The two were of the same level as Guliang Dao. Miao Jun could only look up to these top battle generals. It really was rare to see two top battle generals in one faction. It was the first time Miao Jun had met a Zha Ge, but he had heard of this name before. Gold Battle General, one of the three great battle generals of the Stellar Rahula clan. He hadn't thought the other would also enter Xiao Mo Ge's service. One could not forget that Xiao Mo Ge himself was also Gold Battle General. Even those others such as Xu Long and the people under Gong Suncha were not lacking compared to Tang Fei. It completely surpassed his imagination, just how fierce the competition in this faction was. Tang Fei was very talented, but if she did not gain experience, it was hard to say what she could accomplish in the future. Right now, a political structure had taken form under Xiao Mo Ge, and it would not be so easy to become of the main commanders. He understood his student very well. With her personality, since she agreed to follow Zhou Mo, she would not regret it no matter how underutilized she was. The other who he also taught was Xu Long. He was one of Zhou Mo's inner circle, and he did not have to worry about the other's future. Only Tang Fei had been in an awkward position. He hadn't thought that Zhou Mo would throw out such a plan. He immediately recognized that this was a 1 in 1,000 chance for Tang Fei. Before Tang Fei could speak, Miao Jun stood unhesitatingly. Yes, we will not fail. Chapter 658. The Black Smoke Yao's memory piecing art. The establishment of the Tongzi Battalion went smoothly. Miao Jun knew what needed to be done, and clearly had experience in this area. Many people noticed this and were curious about his past. Miao Jun's skill wasn't just theoretical, he was experienced, the kind of experiences that could not be obtained by just studying to be a battle general. Pu Yao had specialized lie-detecting Yao arts, and quickly identified the spies mixed within the crowd. Techniques that broadened Zhou Mo's experiences. The Tongzi Battalion quickly formed its basic combat structure. The ones that had joined were mostly from small families, and had some ability. Following Miao Jun's suggestions, Tang Fei did not recruit a large number of people, but picked only the most outstanding. Compared with the other battalions, the Tongzi Battalion could only be said to be a small battalion of about 800 people. These 800 people were picked out from approximately 100,000 people. In terms of average individual power, they were much stronger than Sung Lianer's celestial planet guards. Xiao Mo Ge's present reputation was much more attractive to the experts than Sung Yi's. What shocked Zhou Mo even more was that more than 20 general-level Mo had come to join him as well. This caused Zhou Mo to feel a bout of pride. Gu is now a major figure that could recruit general levels. There were 7 battle generals among the 20 general levels, and all of them were silver battle generals. This made Zhou Mo overjoyed. Right now he did not lack for gold battle generals. Gong Suncha, Bihan, Miao Jun and Zha Ge, all of them could act by themselves. Gong Suncha and Bihan were top battle generals. But in a whole battalion, other than a powerful main commander, the intermediate level commanders were also very important. Especially when the battalions grew larger, more and more outstanding intermediate level battle generals were needed. Yet Zhou Mo lacked these intermediate level battle generals. When the additional manpower was accepted into the combat structure, Zhou Mo's power would undoubtedly go up another level. The stringent criteria for recruitment quickly spread between people. The people who had been watching were surprised. Who did this guy think he was? Even those martial levels most likely couldn't compare to him. The people who had not passed the selection started to mock and furiously slandered Xiao Mo Ge. They all thought that they had strength, and it would be easy to be selected. However, they had been eliminated and they were filled with discontent. Xiao Mo Ge was so full of himself and so proud. Zhou Mo did not pay attention to this. Since he had given the Tang Fei and Miao Jun permission to create the battalion, he did not interfere. He would never question the employed, and never employ the questionable one. Every commander's style was different, their way of fighting and their way of cultivation. The systematic teamwork that was required would be directed by Gong Sun Cha. Zuo focused his time on his cultivation. He was progressing rapidly. He had benefited greatly from that hard battle against Marshal Yu. He needed a long time to digest these things. But once he did, his power would skyrocket. Luo Li and Sung Lianer were also in the same state. The purple energy inside Agui's body was growing daily at an astounding rate. It seemed as though that battle had suddenly opened a door in Agui's body. Purple energy flooded out, and right now, there was 3 times more purple energy inside Agui's body compared to before. Agui had become even stronger, but Zuomo's worries increased. This strange Shen power was a double-edged sword. Harming the enemy meant harming oneself. However, Zuo wasn't able to do anything. He could only suppress the urgency inside, and focused even more on his cultivation. Maybe when he became stronger he could find the key to resolving the purple energy inside Agui's body. His greatest improvement had come from the Ten Crow Celestial Domain. He had seen every detail of the completed Ten Crow Celestial Domain. Many areas that had been unclear before were now engraved in his mind, so his improvement naturally sped up. Right now he was just one step away from the completed state of the Ten Crow Celestial Domain. Other than his comprehension of the Ten Crow Celestial Domain, there was the great degree of maturation in his Mo physique. The strange fragments of energy that had been formed from the creation and destruction of the anti-dragon claws and Sunshin crystal's powers were the most primal power. They had strengthened Zuo in all areas. Mo physique, spiritual consciousness, Ling power, even his Shen power, all of them had increased greatly. This was the most wondrous power that Zuo had ever seen, but when he thought of it, he found that it really was lucky. Both the Sun Crystal Seed and the Anti-Dragon Claw were ultimate treasures of the world. Obtaining one would mean a person had great luck. Having obtained 2 at once, even Zuo sighed in shock at his own luck. The Mo matrix that had formed with the Anti-Dragon Claw had become dim as the Anti-Dragon Claw became silent, and seemed to have gone into hibernation. Zuo was slightly disappointed by the slumber of the Anti-Dragon Claw. He had originally thought that he could carry this weapon around and dominate in all directions. Now his wish had gone up in smoke. However, it was good that he didn't need to carry such an enormous thing on his back. In Zuomo's sense of beauty, that thing was really ugly. The 3,000 threads of worry did not change, and now became the strongest weapon that Zuo had. Zuo felt that he really didn't have enough time. There were all types of cultivation he could work on, but each one would take up a large amount of time. Just as Zuo wanted to cut himself in half to get more work done, the black smoke Yao ran over while appearing secretive. What is it? Zuo looked at the other's cunning face and muttered inside. Did this guy do something bad again? Then he felt slightly puzzled. Zuo would feel it was normal if it was the orange-haired Yao doing this. But in his mind, the black smoke Yao was usually calm, steady, and well-behaved. Boss, let me show you something. The black smoke Yao lowered his voice and looked around. Had this guy really stolen something? Zuo felt even more puzzled. He took what the black smoke Yao handed over. It was a little paper card with some words written on it. Zuo looked with bewilderment at the black smoke Yao, and then skimmed through. When he saw the first phrase, he was stunned where he stood. There wasn't much content on the paper card, and he quickly finished reading it. Zuo finally came out of his daze. 2 spots of red made their way onto his cheeks. This expression would only occur in one circumstance. Xiao Mo had struck it rich. The steel's text. Zuo forced himself to be calm, but his voice still went off tune. N. The black smoke Yao lowered his volume and said carefully, Boss, you know that I am weak. In order to stop Lin Qian, and to create an opportunity for Big Orange and the others, I charged for the steel. Then you remembered it? Zuomo's voice was excited. It is not so simple. The black smoke Yao grimaced. I have a rare skill that not many know of. I have an eidetic memory. However, I only had a cursory glance as Lin Qian reacted too quickly. I recalled this event a while ago, and then I noticed I could recall some of the text on the steel. But it was all very blurry and I had to use memory piecing art to slowly piece it together. Memory piercing art? Zhuo Emo was slightly shocked. He had never heard of this Yao art before. Pu Yao suddenly spoke. It is a type of support Yao art. It can replay past events in the mind like a puzzle coming together. It has the benefit of improving memory. When one reaches a high level, they will gain an eidetic memory and can browse their memories at any time. However, this kind of Yao art is easy to learn but hard to master. It doesn't have any big uses. Only those old researchers would spend energy on things like this. Zhuo Emo was very shocked. So there were Yao arts like this. The black smoke Yao was slightly embarrassed. My talent is average. In order to help my cultivation, I cultivated the memory piecing art. My eidetic memory only came about after I started cultivating this. But the time has been short, and I only got a short glance at the steel's text. My impression is very fuzzy, but I still decided to try with the memory piecing art. This is the content that I have pieced together using the memory piecing art. It is not very complete, and I'm not sure if the content is accurate. When he talked about this, the black smoke Yao was slightly embarrassed. He had gathered his courage for a long time before he had come to find Zhuo Emo. He knew that the steel text was important, but what he had pieced together was incomplete, and he didn't even dare to say that it was accurate. In cultivation methods, the difference of one character could cause a great misunderstanding. He didn't know if this thing he had was accurate, and therefore have any value. Boss, just take a look, don't cultivate it. When the black smoke Yao finished saying this, he felt his face flush. Before Zhuo Emo could speak, he had run away. Zhuo Emo laughed. This black smoke Yao seemed calm usually, but he was truly adorable. His gaze landed quickly on the little card in his hand. There are some mistakes, but the general part seemed correct. Pu Yao's voice was filled with excitement. So that is how it is. So that is how it is. In comparison, Wei was much calmer. Not bad. The two quickly picked out the mistakes on the paper. Of the two, one was an old Yao that was thousands of years old. The other came from an ancient tribe. And their knowledge was not something that Zhuo Emo could rival. As expected, Zhuo Emo found that the places in the content where he had felt that it was rough were now much clearer. Shi Ziming had not tried to shroud this in mystery. The few phrases caused Zhuo Emo to see a whole new world. Almost unconsciously, the Shen power in Zhuo Mo's body started to move. This time there was no delay. When his thought formed, his Shen power would follow. A strange feeling formed. His spiritual consciousness spread from the dantian in his head, while the dantian in his abdomen was unusually active. Threads of Ling power spread happily from his abdomen and flowed endlessly along his channels. The power grew like branches from the main channels and innervated every inch of blood and flesh. Ling power, spiritual consciousness, and Emo physique formed a complex and gigantic system. A phrase from the paper card flowed across Zhuo Mo's mind, and he suddenly had an epiphany. He finally understood what the key to the loss of Shen power was. The origin of spiritual consciousness was the head. The power was formed from the inside, from the soul, and then released. The Emo physique was the exact opposite. Power originated from the physical body, and the power went from the outside to the inside. Ling power was the bridge between the two. It was formed in the dantian and spread throughout the body by the channels. It permeated the blood and flesh, but also into the soul. When this system became clear in Zhuo Mo's mind, his body suddenly shook. The three powers began circulated unconsciously. They joined together, but they were also clearly divided. As they continued to circulate, Shen power formed. Zhuo Mo's body reached a state of harmony. Each power went about their own duties, but they were of one mind, one existence. He felt he was stronger than he had ever been. His body was like the universe, full of life and immortal. A strange emotion filled his mind. It was not the strength of his power, but the harmony of his body and soul was powerful as one. Editor's notes. 1. I think this is a reference to famous work. I want to say it is a line spoken by Cao Cao in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Also, Does anyone think that a Gui's purple energy grows with how strong Zuemo gets? He powers up, she gets worse. Clearly a connection. Chapter 659. Lycianaire. You have worked hard these past few years. The sect leader's voice was heard from above. The tone was filled with gratification and affection. The disciples looked at their little shimmy standing in the hall, like a goddess. Many people had expressions of love, but there was also a bit of respect and fear in this love. Compared to her flighty and mischievousness attitude in the past, the present Lycianaire looked much more steady, and even more beautiful. Once she had only been a playful little girl, now there was maturity, and a presence that was hard to describe. Looking at the calm and steady figure in the center, many of the disciples couldn't help but feel emotional. Their little shimmy that had been favored for so many years had grown up to become a leader. There was a faint friendly smile on her face that caused people to feel good. When people were not paying attention, she blinked her eyes playfully at the sect leader, and the sect leader returned an affectionate smile from the corner of his mouth. He was filled with pride. His granddaughter had lived up to his hopes. However, he quickly hid away the mirth on his lips and said in a stern voice, I have gathered you all here today to assign missions to each of you. Yes, the disciples said in unison. 1 month ago, Heavywood Jie was taken over by the MO. The MO were cunning and sealed off all methods of communication. So we didn't discover this until 5 days ago, when they had took over 3 nearby Jie, including Bright Jing Jie. The disciples were astounded, their faces full of disbelief. They didn't know where Heavywood Jie was, but every disciple knew where Bright Jing Jie was located. Bright Jing Jie was only an intermediate-sized Jie, but it was an important producer of Tianhuan's Jingshi, including a special kind of Jingshi called Bright Jingshi which was only produced in Heavywood Jie. Bright Jing Jie provided large amounts of both Jingshi and Bright Jingshi for Tianhuan, an important resource Jie for Tianhuan. But the noisy hall quickly quieted down. Tianhuan was one of the 4 great sect, and their disciples were all disciplined. After the initial shock, they quickly recovered their calm. The sect leader was very satisfied with the performance of the disciples. The importance of Bright Jing Jie to us does not need to be stated. I believe that you all know, the sect leader said coolly. The elders in the sect all have important missions and cannot go, so the mission will be given to you this time. Tian Man. This disciple is here. Sure, Tian Man stood out. Do you have the confidence if this matter is handed to you? The sect leader said. I will not fail, Sure Tian Man said seriously. You can select the personnel and battalions that you want. I only have one condition. Take back Bright Jing Jie in a month, the sect leader said coolly. This disciple understands. Sure Tian Man responded with a calm expression and no panic at all. The sect leader showed a satisfied expression. Grandfather. Lycianaire shook the sect leader's arm with a pout. All right. If you keep shaking, grandfather will break apart. The sect leader said with a smile. His eyes were narrowed, and he had a relaxed expression. You have done well. Even your Gui Shirshu praised you. Not bad. He said not bad twice, which showed just how proud he was. Gui Shidi was a strict trainer who did not spare people due to their relationships. It was extremely difficult to earn praise from his mouth. He felt very proud that his granddaughter had received praises from Gui Shidi, who was famed for his strictness. Haha, of course, look whose granddaughter I am. Lycianaire giggled. The sect leader was very pleased by the flattery, but he still pretended to be stern and coughed lightly. But do not be too proud, you must know. Seeing that her grandfather was about to start lecturing her again, Lycianaire felt her head about to swell. She hurriedly changed the topic. Grandfather, you summoned me back with such urgency. Is there something important? The sect leader was distracted and the smile on his face disappeared. He showed slightly worry. Your Xiaorong Xixiang is not in a good situation. What about Xiaorong Xixiang? The smile on Lycianaire's face disappeared and she asked urgently. He first suffered a loss to Muxi, and then again to a person called Gong Sun Cha. While his situation is not good, there is no danger temporarily. Muxi of the Palace Lakewood clan. Lycianaire's response was quick. Yes, I hadn't thought that the Palace Lakewood clan would have such an outstanding member in their younger generation, the sect leader said emotionally. Then who is Gongsun Cha? Li Xian'er's brow furrowed. She tilted her head and looked with an expression of curiosity. At this time, she finally looked as playful as she did in the past. This person is not well known and it isn't known where he came from, but he is very strong. The sect leader's expression was grave. It has been some time since the battle. Gongsun Cha is very mysterious, and we only recently identified which faction he belonged to. Which faction? Li Xian'er blinked her eyes curiously. She was surprised that Mu Shi had defeated Xiaorong Xixiang, but that was within the range of normality. Palace Lakewood clan was one of the famed families in the Yao world, and had a long history of producing outstanding battle generals. But this something Cha was able to defeat Xiaorong Xixiang as well. She was shocked. She knew just how strong Xiaorong Xixiang was. Among the younger disciples in the sect, only Tianman Xixiang could rival him. Xiaomoge. The sect leader said 3 words. Li Xian'er's face was puzzled. Who is he? This person is very mysterious. The sect leader's expression was grave. You have just returned and there are some things you do not know. First, Xiaomoge and Guliang Dao are good friends. Just a while ago, Guliang Dao suddenly left Xixian. The cause of this was this Xiaomoge. Ah! Li Xian'er exclaimed, and wasn't able to maintain her calm. Of course she knew who Guliang Dao was. Xixian's tiger general, the undoubted top battle general of the younger generation. Such a person had betrayed their sect. If it wasn't that the person who was telling her this was her grandfather, she would have had a hard time believing it. The sect leader seemed to not see his granddaughter's shock and continued. No one can say what Xiaomoge's background is. Even now we are uncertain about whether he is a Yao or Mo. He had gone into the 10-finger prison and activated a prison-breaking battle. This person isn't just strong, he is an outstanding battle general. He defeated Corps Commander Yu Heng of the Regular Corps, a gold battle general. Li Xian'er's mouth was open wide. Her face that was usually filled with smiles was full of shock. The sect leader did not stop and continued. Xiaomoge then appeared in the Mo's Great Peace City. Li Xian'er recovered and hurriedly asked, "The Great Peace City with the Great Peace Mo steals?" "Yes." The sect leader said sternly. "Do you know about the Great Peace Treasure Pavilion?" "I know." Li Xian'er nodded obediently. "I have read about it in the records." The sect leader nodded. "We have always had our people in Great Peace City, because of the Great Peace Treasure Pavilion. That is also why we know such much about what happened at Great Peace City." Li Xian'er did not interrupt and listened curiously. Xiaomoge suddenly appeared at Great Peace City. When he appeared, he made a flamboyant appearance. He caused the worldly apparition Shifting Star Sands, killed Shinyu who had comprehended the Peacock King plume. The Mo physique he cultivates is the pure, 10-crow celestial apparatus. When the Great Peace Treasure Pavilion appeared, we also sent people, but we hadn't expected Kuan-Luan to send Lin Qian. Lin Qian. Li Xian'er jumped in fright. Lin Qian was the eldest disciple of Kuan-Luan, and undoubtedly the first person of the younger generation. Lin Qian is really powerful and managed to intimidate all of the Mo. He almost managed to achieve his aim, but at the most crucial moment, Xiaomoge used the anti-dragon claw to block his sword strike. Anti-dragon claw. Li Xian'er felt slightly dizzy. Each of the Sky Missouri weapons of the Mo were famed. Normal Xiozha may not know of them, but how could the core disciples of a major sect be ignorant? Even the sect leader grimaced. This boy can be called a freak. With power of a general level, he tamed the Sky Missouri weapon. This has never happened before in the history of the Mo. Then when Great Peace City was surrounded by 100 Savage Realm's strongest bandits, the Ming bandits, he defeated them. Reports said fighting was extreme, and that the battalion that defeated the Ming bandits is one that you know. A battalion that I know? Which one? Li Xian'er asked dazedly. Xiankong Temple's Sim Battalion. Sim Battalion. Li Xian'er's eyes were dumbstruck. Of course she knew Sim Battalion. The 4 great sects had exchanges and knew each other very well. The famed Sim Battalion, How could she not know? She murmured. Isn't the commander of Sin Battalion someone called Bihan? Yes. The sect leader nodded. You came back late and don't know yet. The first time Bihan was sent to fight, he took Sin Battalion and betrayed Xian Kong Temple. Li Xian'er was completely stunned. Was this Xiao Emogu a specialist in getting people to leave and betray their factions? Xian Kong Temple's Bihan left. Shi Xian's Tiger General Gu Liangdao left. The disciples that betrayed their sects were all core disciples. What kind of power did this guy have? A hint of curiosity suddenly rose. Once it formed, it couldn't be erased. Looking at his granddaughter's wide mouth and stunned expression, the sect leader then said, Then they encountered Marshal Yu, who came with 10,000 Yu frontier guards. Marshal Yu wanted the anti-dragon claw that Xiao Emoge had. The two fought. Xiao Emoge's group killed Marshal Yu and defeated the Yu frontier guards. Li Xian'er felt that she was completely numb. He had even killed a marshal. This person could not be described any longer as freakish. When the battle finished, 2 battalions came to reinforce him. One was Gong Suncha, the other was Gu Liangdao. The sect leader spoke meaningfully. This was also the reason that Gu Liangdao left Shixian. Freak. A definite freak. Li Xian'er swallowed hard. She had always felt that she was a mischievous person, but today, she discovered that she actually was very good. This Xiao Emoge caused a storm of blood wherever he went. The people he met would betray their sections. Compared to him, she really was obedient and quiet. She suddenly had an impulse to meet this person. This Xiao Emoge who could not settle down and always created a storm. The sect leader glanced at his granddaughter and showed an imperceptible smile. However, he quickly resumed his solemn expression. This time, you have to go on behalf of grandfather to the Mo territories. Chapter 660. Destiny finally having guidance on how to comprehend Shen power. Zuomo's control over the Shen power inside his body greatly increased. Zuomo had to admire Shi Ziming. He was a great person indeed. Having never cultivated any power in his life, but he was still able to understand the secrets of power. This kind of talent only appeared once in 1,000 years. Having found the key, Zuomo's Shen power growth did not increase, but his manipulation of Shen power reached a whole new level. The power of Shen techniques were far more powerful than the other 3 powers at the same stage. However, the Shen power inside Zuomo was very weak and Shen techniques required a lot of Shen power. The cryptic text on the golden leaf had become much easier to understand. He quickly mastered some of the Shen techniques. In the past, when he had used Shen techniques, his 3 powers had to be individually moved and coordinated. Zuomo had found it difficult. Now when he cast a Shen technique, almost as his thought had formed, the 3 powers would circulate together, and the Shen technique would form in that instant. It seemed to flow smoothly and occur naturally. There wasn't any blockade. After his success, Zuomo's first thought was to share this method with Ague, but he didn't know if Ague could understand this. The other person he could share this with was Tseng Lianer, but Zuomo hesitated. In his mind, Tseng Lianer's importance could not compare to Ague. However, she had never retreated from any of his battles, and had even been wounded last time. Zuomo felt that she could be considered one of his people. He pulled Ague and Tseng Lianer over before starting to talk. Agui's face was wooden as though she did not hear it, but Tseng Lianer's expression was overjoyed. She kept her ears open in fear she would miss a word. Zuomo narrated everything he had experienced before stopping, but Ague still looked the same and didn't react at all. Zuomo sighed inside and then rubbed Agui's head. Seeing Tseng Lianer in a trance, he did not make a sound and left, pulling Ague along. Having left, Zuomo suddenly thought of a question, and called the black smoke Yao over. Zuomo said with a serious expression, "The thing you gave me is very useful. Tell me what you want." The black smoke Yao understood Zuomo's meaning. Zuomo wanted to thank him. He thought for a moment and then said calmly, "My talent is average, but Big Orange's talent is very good. Boss, teach him more." Seeing the black smoke Yao calmly giving his chance to Big Orange, Zuomo was moved. He said with a smile, "Everyone here are brothers. Even if you don't ask that, I won't hide anything from him." This is me thanking you. If you have something you want, or some wish, as long as it is possible. The black Samyao shook his head calmly. Boss, you also say that everyone here are brothers. Since we are brothers, isn't this something that should be done? Boss, if you go around thanking us for this and for that, aren't you making us outsiders? Zhuemo stilled at the black smoke Yao's words. The black smoke Yao had a calm expression that seemed to be full of sincerity in Zhuemo's eyes. He couldn't help but be moved. He nodded and said, "You are right, I'm treating you like an outsider." Zhuemo decided secretly to find a set of suitable Yao arts for the black smoke Yao. If he didn't have any, then he would make one. While Zhuemo's present strength had not reached martial level, his understanding of power may not be less than that of a martial. He knew the mysteries of Shen power, and had experienced even higher level power. He had an understanding of the quality and direction of power that surpassed his strength. "Darren, they are going to Nether Springs Jia," a scout respectfully reported. Xiao Mo guessed destination wasn't a secret and many knew. Nether Springs Jia. Jiangzhe's eyes flickered across the Jia map, and quickly landed on a faraway place. His expression was calm and serene. The scout lowered his head and didn't dare to breath. Ever since Feng Yushiji had been killed, Darren had become even more silent and cold. The commander's fear of him grew by the day. "You are dismissed." Jiangzhe waved his hand. "Yes." The scout released a breath and hurriedly responded respectfully before carefully retreating. After the scout left, Jiangzhe's eyes did not leave the Jia map. A moment later he seemed to sigh and murmur, "Bihan." On the desk beside him, a paper that had crease marks had the newest orders from the sect. "Kill the traitor Bihan. Exterminate Sim Battalion." He was not shocked when he received this order. Xiankong Temple's inner core had always been tight-knit, and the sect leader wouldn't tolerate betrayal. Gu Liangdao's betrayal had shocked all of the Xiuzhou world. Xixian's reputation had been greatly damaged. While the betrayal of Sim Battalion had not been spread far and wide like Gu Liangdao, the higher-ups in the bigger sect all knew. The sect definitely would not permit Bihan to live. In order to kill Bihan and Sim Battalion, large numbers of reinforcements were being funneled towards the mission. The battalions that had been ordered to come surpassed any of his previous missions. Jiangzhe felt complicated feelings. Who could have thought that the biggest action of Xiankong Temple in the last 1,000 years was to kill a traitor? Sim Battalion and Jiangxi Battalion, Bihan and Jiangzhe, two core battalions, two young battle generals that had rivaled each other since childhood. They were about to welcome a destined battle of life and death. Even people like Jiangzhe who had a strong mind couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Emoge. This unfamiliar name entered Jiangzhe's vision. Unbelievable fights, each could almost be called miraculous. Jiangzhe was filled with curiosity toward Xiao Emoge. Even someone as proud as Bihan had entered his service. If he didn't have confidence in the abilities of the sect, he would snort at the news. Bihan was usually of few words, but when he fought, he was fiery, brutal, and bloodthirsty. He would actually swear allegiance to someone else. However, someone that could kill a martial level. This strength was enough to stun people. He shook his head and his gaze landed on another name. Gongsun Cha. This name that was unknown had been labeled as extremely dangerous. His danger level was the same as Bihan. He had to be careful. If this Gongsun Cha really had the same level of skill of Bihan, then he did not have confidence in this fight. Jiangzhe was more willing to believe this was due to the importance the sect placed on this fight. At the same level as Bihan. If that was true, then it would be terrifying. Jiangzhe threw the stray thoughts to the back of his mind. No matter how strong his opponents were, this battle could not be avoided. He didn't just have to win, he had to make it beautiful. Because this battle wasn't just related to the reputation of the sect, it was also needed to intimidate the stupid people that were considering shifting allegiances in the sect. Gu Liangdao's betrayal of Xixian had had major effects with the factions within the sect. Right now, Xixian was divided and its people were not united. This kind of matter could not happen to Xiankong Temple. Jiangzhe was to use reality to tell them there was only one outcome in betraying the sect. Die without any chance of burial. Lin Qian was naked as he soaked in a crystal-clear pool. There were numerous complex seal scripts that crisscrossed around the border of the pool. His expression was serene as though he was a sleeping baby. There were 8 or so sword xiao around the pool. Their faces were wizened, but when their eyes moved, sharp sword-like lights would flash. Suddenly, Lin Qian's body gave off a faint light. The light was not blinding and was comfortable to see. The old people around the pool shifted with excited expressions on their faces. This warm energy was not like any power they had seen before. Shen power. This is Shen power. The heavens bless our Kunlun. Little Lin Qian is definitely the pillar of our sect. Lin Qian slowly opened his eyes from within the pool. The light disappeared from his cool eyes. He did not move, but the water in the pool suddenly flooded towards him. It came in layers and moved like smoke. In a blink, Lin Qian was dressed and the water in the pool had turned into a blue robe. This disciple greets sect leader Shishu. Lin Qian respectfully bowed. Is it Shen power? A Kunlu elder couldn't resist asking. Yes, Lin Qian said respectfully. But it is not complete. This disciple is just mimicking Shen power from memory. Try and see. The one who spoke was the Kunluan sect leader. His brow was straight, and his eyes had been half-deaded all this time. The pair of eyes were deep, aged, and seemed to see through everything. Yes. Lin Qian raised his right hand. Faint blue Shen power turned into a flying sword that appeared in his hand. It really is Shen power. The power is above Shen power. An elder couldn't help but say. The sect leader came forward and reached out to grip the blue flying sword made from Shen power. Pia pia pia. Countless blue lights exploded in the sect leader's hand, but the sect leader did not seem to be affected and his hand did not move. Pia. A sound that was louder than the ones before it. The Shen power blue sword suddenly exploded. The sect leader's hand did not move at all. The blue energy that had exploded seemed to be imprisoned in his palm, like an invisible cage. The lights flashed, but they were unable to break free. The sect leader only took away his hand after the light faded. He said coolly, "It is more domineering than Ling power and about twice as strong. However, if one wants to cultivate Shen power, they will have to cultivate all 3 powers." Lin Qian was floored by the sect leader's deduction. As expected of the sect leader, he saw it at a glance. Lin Qian said respectfully, "Yes. All 3 powers?" The other elders frowned. Kunlun had yearned after Shen power for a long time, but they had never gotten it. If it wasn't that Lin Qian had fought against Xiao Mogu and the others and experienced Shen power, they still wouldn't know anything about it. They hadn't expected Lin Qian to have such high comprehension that he could create the initial form of Shen power after one battle. These Kunlun elders had been at the height of their joy, and thought that Shen power could be taught widely. But when they heard that the sect leader say that all 3 powers were required, they all frowned. In Kunlun, there were very rarely those that could cultivate 3 powers together. In other words, the great majority of disciples were not qualified to cultivate Shen power. In this case, the utility of Shen power would be deeply underscored. If a new disciple started training now, they wouldn't know how long it would take until they were able to fight. The state of affairs was so chaotic now they could not afford to wait. The sect leader's eyes that seemed to see through everything opened slightly. He looked towards Lin Qian and changed the topic. Tell us about the impression those people cultivating Shen power gave you. Lin Qian closed his eyes and thought back. Then he opened them. They cultivate different Shen power. Xiao Mogu's Shen power is domineering and burning. The 2 women next to him have an eerie and a cold power. That middle-aged woman's Shen power is lacking compared to Xiao Mogu's trio, and is just in its infancy. The sect leader nodded. Go down now and rest. The elders and I will perfect the cultivation method for Shen power. Come back in a few days to try the new method. Lin Qian was about to leave when the sect leader suddenly called him. Go investigate all the records of ancient tribe descendants being killed in the last 200 years. Lin Qian stilled and then quickly reacted. Yes. Chapter 661 The orange-haired Yao learned the Yao arts that Zhuo Mo taught on the first try. The orange-haired Yao laughed into the sky. His bright orange hair floated around like a ball of fire. He was very smug. Things like Yao arts cannot satisfy a genius like me. Owen felt this guy was an eyesore no matter how he looked. He said disdainfully, with just the amount of ability you have, you can beat your teeth out with just a finger. The orange-haired Yao was furious. Come, come, come. Let us fight 300 rounds. The first one to flee is a dog. Owen glared back angrily. I'm just afraid you are the son of a turtle. Bam, 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 bam. They started again. Nanyu covered her forehead and said with an expression of helplessness, "It will be fine once you are accustomed." The black smoke Yao did not change expression. Ming Juzi and Song Zhe raised their heads at the same time and looked at each other before lowering their heads to go back, concentrating on their own cultivation. Zuoyamo had taught them new Yao arts, but what was most valuable was that he had taught them about the lessons in the Great Peace Mo Steels. Each of them had been given a copy of the text from the Great Peace Mo Steel. The great skill that Zuoyamo had displayed with all kinds of Yao arts had immediately attracted their attention. There was also a group of flower Yao that listened to his lesson with them. Only a one who cultivated Mo skills was an aberration. The two who had progressed the most was the orange-haired Yao, and unexpectedly, the other was a one. There was nothing to be said of the orange-haired Yao's improvement. While he was forgetful and easily distracted, his talent was just as unfathomable as his changes in subject. A one was even weirder. Zuoyamo clearly was talking about Yao arts, but a wen's Mo skills were what improved. But the two who had improved the most did not like each other. They had to fight a few times each day, especially when Zuoyamo was not present. However, this time, Zuoyamo caught them in the act. Owen stood with lowered eyes in front of Zuoyamo. The orange-haired Yao continued to make faces at Zuoyamo. The other people had expressions of anticipation. Was Darren going to punish these two people who didn't have bottom lines? Why are you two fighting each day? Zuoyamo asked. He is jealous of my astounding talent and handsome face, the orange-haired Yao said seriously. Owen was furious. Come, let us fight 300 rounds. Do not run. The orange-haired Yao's eyes lit up. The first to run is the son of a turtle. You're the son of a turtle. I'll kill you. Zuoyamo could only interfere and hold down the two people. However, even restrained, the two still glared angrily at each other. I have a way for the two of you to decide who is better. Zuoyamo raised his hand. What method? One of you cultivates the Mo physique, the other Yao arts. It is naturally you cannot compare against each other. Yes. The two nodded. They disliked each other, but the two were cultivating completely different things, so they could not see who was better except by fighting. If this is the case, why don't the two of you cultivate the same thing? Then wouldn't it be easy to see who is better? Zuoyamo baited. Haha. Boss is boss, just as good as I am, able to think of such a good idea. The orange-haired Yao laughed. I want you to accept your loss. Owen snorted. Zuoyamo smiled cunningly. I have a method here that requires cultivating Ling power, spiritual consciousness, and the Mo physique together. However, let me tell you first off that it is very difficult to cultivate this method. Is it hard? If it isn't hard, then I cannot show my genius, the orange-haired Yao said loudly. The harder the better. This way, a certain someone will finally accept their defeat. Owen snorted coldly. You idiot, just wait to lick Genius Orange's toes. The orange-haired Yao raised his head proudly to gaze at the sky. I'll kill you, son of a turtle. Owen's eyes burned with fire. Oh, you really have spirit. Motivation. Good. One copy of the method for each of you. Zuoyamo took out 2 jade scrolls with a smile. Each of them took one. Zuoyamo patted the orange-haired Yao's shoulder. Big Orange, do not fail the name of a genius. Boss, don't worry. The orange-haired Yao had a proud expression. There isn't any method created yet that can pose a problem to Genius Orange. Zuoyamo walked in front of a one and patted a Wen's shoulder with a smile. A one, you will have to defend the reputation of guard camp. Boss, don't worry. I'll kill the son of a turtle. Owen gritted out. Crude. The orange-haired Yao had a disdainful expression. Idiot. Owen glared back. Work hard. Zuemo smiled as he waved at the two and left. This Xiao Mo guest battalion is too difficult to enter. I heard that only 8 were admitted today. It's normal. Think about it, haven't you seen that they don't lack for people? If it wasn't that there were too many people coming, why would they form a new battalion? It really is frustrating. Did you see the factions nearby? All of them are jealous. I heard my brother say that they have sent people around to recruit people as well. Even if you don't make it, if you can pass the first round of selection, you don't have to worry about finding your next job. If you can go through 2 rounds, there will be at least 20 places you can pick with good benefits. Even the best cannot compare to Xiao Mo guest battalion. He is so young and able to even kill a marshal. His future is not something that these little factions can have. Maybe he can become king. King? You are exaggerating. Discussion of Xiao Mo Gu was everywhere in the hotel. As the hottest topic of discussion, there was new news about him every day. Also, Xiao Mo Gu was just over 20 and had created such a string of miracles. His influence among the younger generation had reached a stunning level. This was the age when people were most spirited and ambitious. A living role model motivated them. No one noticed that in the corner, the dim and muddy eyes of an old person suddenly flashed when he heard that Xiao Mo Gu had killed a marshal. The old man was bald, his face full of wrinkles, his clothing in rags, and looked very poor. He finished drinking the poor wine before standing and walking out of the hotel. He silently walked on the street. When the wind blew by, his figure looked desolate. Customer, take a look. The newest mirages about the battle where Xiao Mo Gu killed Marshal Yu. Completely new mirages. Only here. Recorded by those present. You have to watch. When the shouts of the store on the side entered the old man's eyes, he stopped walking. How much? 15 mabe. Give me one. All right. The old man walked to the corner and played the mirage. The store was not lying and it was a first-hand recording. However, the recorder was not very powerful and the interference from the power released during the fight had been great, so the image was not very clear. The old man watched carefully. When he saw Zuemo and Marshal Yu fight, light flashed across the dull eyes. At this time, the old man was like a vicious weapon with sharp edges and filled with a dangerous presence. But he quickly noticed his change and recovered his previous state. But when he saw Agui, his body shook. Especially when the purple light in Agui's eyes flashed from within the mirage, the old man became motionless. 2 lines of hot tears suddenly rolled from his dull eyes. The mirage in front of him shattered into dots of light without any warning. A sword xiao. A cold voice came from above the large hall, and the commanders below shivered. Yes. The person who spoke was prostrated on the ground and didn't dare to move. His expression was terrified as large beads of sweat dripped from his forehead. The drops made clear sounds as they hit the floor. The commanders looked with sympathy at him. A sword xiao dares to move around on my territory. The cold voice was emotionless as though it was narrating a simple thing. The mo that was on the ground sweated even more. The other commanders also changed expression. Anyone could hear that Lord was angered. Good, very good. The mo who was on the ground had an ashen face. He suddenly kowtowed furiously. Then he raised his blood-covered face and said with a trembling voice, "This subordinate is useless. I have disappointed Lord. This subordinate will pay for the crime with death, and is not angry. This subordinate's child is young. Lord, brothers, please look after him." Finishing, his right hand suddenly hit his own head and his head shattered. His body fell to the floor lifelessly. The commanders had expression of pain, but no one dared to speak. It would be bad to ask for mercy at this time. Lord was brutal, but he still cared about those that had been with him for a long time. As expected, the person in the hall was silent for a moment before speaking. Give a spot in the child camp this year to his son. Tell him not to shame the name of his father. Bury him with honors. Yes, the commanders acknowledged. I heard that Sword Xiao said that he did not fear any fight, yes? The commanders' hearts shook and they looked at each other. They hadn't thought that even this had reached the ears of their lord, and they immediately knew it wasn't good. They knew Lord's temper. He always wanted to be the best. Since the words the other had said reached Lord's ears, Lord would not be able to tolerate this. If they continued to be silent, everyone was going to end up bad. They exchanged looks. One battle general stood out and said, "This subordinate requests to fight. This subordinate requests to fight. This subordinate also requests to fight." The MO started to come out and request to fight. "You are not allowed to use battalions. In my territory I cannot lose face. And if you have to use battalions to deal with a single sword shio." The cold voice echoed in the large hall. Everyone felt bitter inside. If they knew beforehand how the situation would devolve, then they would have already used battalions to kill this sword shio. Then nothing would have happened. But since Lord had said this, they couldn't do anything. "I give you 5 days. If you have not killed that sword shio, you can end your own lives. You do not have to come see me." Everyone felt their scalp prickle. The corpse on the ground entered their view. Their expressions changed, but they gritted their teeth and acknowledged. "Yes." Chapter 662. Leaving the hall, everyone had serious expressions. One of the more reputable clan leaders said, "Everyone, we have no method of retreat. If we cannot complete this task, the Lord will be angry and it will be a calamity to our clans." The other people nodded. "Lord is right. A sword shio dares to be so arrogant under our eyes. If we left him alive we would have no face left." "You are right." The people all agreed. They quickly discussed for the clans to send out the strongest experts of their clan to kill this sword shio. No one thought that this battle that was fated to shake the world would be started by their hands. The youth looked at the person in front of him. He was startled and then shot forward to grab the other's collar. He lowered his voice and cried, "You dared to come back? You aren't afraid of being killed?" His lowered voice was filled with suppressed excitement. The newcomer chuckled. "Since I dare to come, I am not afraid." If someone saw this, they would definitely scream. This person was Guliang Dao. In Shixian, Guliang Dao had sneaked back into Shixian. Who could have thought of this? The white-robed youth released him and set up a jinji to stop people from eavesdropping before he smiled. "I forgot that you are actually a detail-minded person and would leave yourself an escape route. You had conquered those MOGF for so long. How could you not do something? You knew that this day would come." Guliang Dao's smile was slightly bitter. The youth saw this and couldn't help but sigh inside. He smiled and said, "You are pretty good now. At least you are free and don't need to be ordered around by those young masters. Come, let's drink some tea." Guliang Dao did not speak and drained the cup. "Come and help me," Guliang Dao suddenly said in a muffled voice. The youth holding the teacup suddenly stilled. His expression was unchanged as he said with a smile, "Your situation is not very good right now. While the people under you are loyal, but many of them have families over here. As time progresses, they will change. Also, you only have Mo under your command, and they are not friendly to you, Xiozha." Guliang Dao laughed, and there was no fear on his face. "You are right, so you come help me. No one knows your talents better than me. It would be very boring for you to die of old age on this mountain." The youth suddenly smiled and rose. "Let's go." Guliang Dao stilled. "What? You have other things to do?" the youth asked. "Nothing," Guliang Dao instinctively answered. Then he laughed. "I spent so much time trying to think of many ways to persuade you, but I didn't even use one of them." The youth shrugged. "I'm just an accountant in Shixian, and the amount of jingshi I get every month is pitiful. I don't have any family or relationships. At least, with you, I will get to eat meat." Haha. Guliang Dao laughed freely. Their departure did not attract any attention. For Shixian, he was just an insignificant person. Li Xian'er looked around curiously. This was the first time she was in the Mo territories. The guards around her were careful and looked warily at the surroundings. When they saw the group of Mo in the distance, they became even more nervous. A youth flew out of the troop and landed near Li Xian'er. "Is this Tian Huan's Miss Xian'er?" The Mo youth bowed and greeted without any timidity. "I am Li Xian'er." Li Xian'er came forward and bowed. "Sir is?" The Mo youth's gaze landed on Li Xian'er, and immediately showed shock. He said with a smile, "This one is the son of Marshal D. Miss Xian'er can call me Shi. She has come with orders from Marshal Miao to welcome Miss Xian'er." "Thanks, Master Shi." Li Xian'er smiled slightly. "Please." She turned his body slightly and reached out to usher her. On the road, the two had a good conversation. She was a good conversationalist and easy to talk to. He had exceptional knowledge, and it was undoubtedly a pleasure to chat with him. Li Xian'er glanced at Zai's guards out of the corners of her eyes, and was intimidated. These Mo guards had heavy killing intent around them, and clearly were experienced. This Marshal D really had considerable power. She had been very shocked when grandfather had told her to come see the Mo. She had gaped when she learned that Tian Huan had deep relationship with the Mo. She had never been so naive to think that Xiuzha should exterminate Yaoma, but she had never thought that Tian Huan and the Mo had such a close relationship. Later, she learned that it wasn't just Tian Huan. The other three great sects also had allies among the Mo. Li Xian'er suspected that there would be allies of the sects in the Yao world as well. After the initial shock, Li Xian'er quickly calmed down. It was normal when she thought about it. The four great sects had existed for thousands of years, and the Mo were not a unified and monolithic group. Her mission was to be an envoy to the Mo on behalf of Tian Huan. This was the first time that Tian Huan and Marshal D would meet for the first time. The troop that welcomed them was very large. Someone of Zai's stature acting as the messenger reflected the importance that Marshal D placed on Li Xian'er's group. Li Xian'er looked around excitedly at the novel scenery along the way. Zai's gaze occasionally landed on Li Xian'er's face, and a hint of heat flashed across his eyes. "This is Xiao Mo guess information." Mingyu Yes' eyes were bright like stars. Ji Yu carefully browsed it. He was able to enter the 10-finger prison and cultivate the 10-crow celestial apparatus. He should have the blood of both Mo and Yao. This person is of unknown background and is very powerful. His Yao arts and Mo skills are very outstanding. He is also a gold battle general. Mingyu Yes' voice was clear and pleasing to hear. What he cultivates is Shen power. Ji Li Yes' expression was shocked. Shen power? Shen power actually exists? He is not the only one. There are two women with him that also cultivate Shen power. We suspect that he is a descendant of an ancient tribe, and that he has a complete Shen power inheritance. Is Shen power really that powerful? Ji Li didn't believe it. The three of them together killed a marshal. Mingyu Yi said lightly. Ji Li Yes' expression moved. Mingyu Yes' beautiful eyes looked at her and she said, "Your mission is to get close to him." "Get close to him? To steal the method?" Gliu asked. "If there is a chance." Ji Li looked with puzzlement at Mingyu Yi. It seemed that the other's main target was not the method. "I think he has a good future." Mingyu Yi looked into the distance. "You think he has a good future?" Ji Li Yes' voice was puzzled. She did not understand. "Maybe he will vie for the world." Mingyu Yes' last four words exploded in Ji Li Yes' ears like lightning. She looked with an ashen expression at Mingyu Yi. "For you, and also for the Ji family, this person is a very good choice." Mingyu Yi looked at her with a smile. Ji Li Yes' face was pale and her hands and feet felt cold. "You will thank me." Mingyu Yi went close to Ji Liu and whispered. Mo and the others had encountered trouble. There were small groups of scouts that appeared occasionally. It was clear that this was not a sign of friendliness. Very quickly, the Mo that had come to join Mo disappeared. The factions along the way who had been polite suddenly became hard to talk to. What made it even more difficult were the battalions that came to harass them. These little battalions were not a threat, but they had numbers on their side. They seriously delayed Mo's traveling speed. "Someone is targeting us," Bihan said coldly. Gong Sun Cha agreed with Bihan. "Yes, someone is manipulating the situation in secret, and they aren't average people. An average person would not be able to command so many little factions." Xiao Mo's reputation was at its highest right now, meaning the reputation of this person that could give these little factions the courage to attack them was probably even more frightening. "Are there any clues?" Mo asked. "I caught many scouts but these people don't know." Gong Sun Cha shook his head as he said, "Why is the other targeting us?" Zuo asked. "Don't know." Gong Sun Cha shook his head. "It seems that we need to start with a few factions." Zuo's expression became icy. The harassment seemed to be worsening. These little battalions were as bothersome as flies. If they allowed this to continue, they would have a hard time moving forward. It was very easy to learn the origins of these scouts. In the night, Bihan leads Sin Battalion to destroy 3 local factions. But unexpectedly, these little factions had seemed to know that there would be a reprisal. The clansmen had moved away, and what was left was almost empty ground. Zuo smelled a conspiracy. It was the deep of the night. Jiang's thoughts wandered as he stared at the Jie map. He had maintained this position for a whole day. Darren report. Xiao Mogu has encountered harassment from many groups. Jiangzhe looked up. He exhaled. He understood that the sect had acted. The sect's power was really unfathomable. In the message he sent the sect, he stated that he hoped that the sect could buy some time for him. He needed more time to set up. Jiangzhe felt much more relaxed. This battle had been a huge pressure on him. He had fought against Bihan since childhood, and the two were very familiar with each other. He knew how terrifying Bihan was. They had sparred in the sect, but he had never thought there would be a day that he and Bihan would meet on the battlefield. There was no retreat from this battle. He had not thought of escaping, but his personality was cautious, and he was even more careful against Bihan. This was a battle that they could not lose. No matter what, they could not lose. Facing such astounding pressure, he was still composed. If there was enough time to prepare, he had the confidence to defeat Bihan. More time meant he would be able to make more preparations. Jiangzhe stared at the Jie map. After fighting this battle, he would go to Cloud Sea Jie to get revenge for Feng Shiji. Jiangzhe said to himself, "That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."